Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's amore. When the world seems to shine like you've had too much wine, that's amore.
7 minutes past the top of the hour. You're tuned in to the Big Talker, 106.7 FM. Great to be back with you in the captain's chair as we guide you through this Tuesday morning, August 3rd, 2021, overlooking Battleship, North Carolina. Our call-in number is 910-299-7535. If you'd like to join the show between now and 10 o'clock, that's 910-299-7535. Want to give my big tip of the cap, of course, and a salute to our friend Chad Adams and TK Turbo for filling in for me yesterday as we had some family in town and other business to attend to. My cousins on my dad's side of the family, my aunt's two sons from New York City and down in Tampa, Florida, in that area, were in town from over the weekend, and we got after it, and it was a great weekend indeed. I hope you enjoyed it. Kind of spilling into this early portion of the work week. Chad, having tuned in to him yesterday for a few minutes, knocked it out of the park, as he always does. Well, he sat in this chair for the better part of 5 years here in southeastern North Carolina, guiding the conversation each and every morning for a 4-hour show, Monday through Friday, 6 to 10 during the days of the old Big Talker. And Chad had talked to me yesterday and to you during the program, and I caught a bit of it as I was in my car, talking about how he sometimes when he gets ready to fill in for me from time to time, and he'll get another opportunity to do so in a couple of weeks when we head out on our annual family vacation to the Outer Banks. 21 years, by the way, 21 summers in a row. My mom's side of the family has vacationed up in the Outer Banks and really looking forward to getting after it with family members. My sister's family living in Georgia, other extended family members elsewhere up and down the Atlantic seaboard. We've got some family members, nearing the end, so to speak, of their time on this planet, and others just beginning their time. Hopefully what will be a very fruitful and beautiful life that they will live, as our youngest a part of the family will be 2 years old on the Outer Banks vacation, and the eldest will be, we'll say in her 80s, and 24 other people in between. So it'll be a wild one, no doubt, and one that we cherish and enjoy every summer when we get to head up to that beautiful part of our state on the Outer Banks. But Chad had mentioned yesterday how every time he gets set to fill in for me, he's all giddy. He's having trouble sleeping the night before. And I will, affirm his feelings and inability to catch some shut-eye, and there are various reasons why. We have a very unique opportunity here in this area, and frankly, this position that we hold and the operation that we've got going on here at the Big Talker FM through Red Wolf Broadcasting is one that is few and far between when it comes to the number of people who get to do what we do on a daily basis. And because of that, there's a lot of excitement behind each morning's program as far as what we have planned for you, the different guests that are coming in. Your calls, of course, add to that. the great partners who support us, who we bring in from time to time, those who are doing great things across our region through philanthropic work and other endeavors. And then, of course, the great guests that we've got lined up for you, the decision makers, our elected officials, others who have skin in the game, so to speak, whether it be education-related issues or the business world. On the political side of things, and we'll get a heavy dose of that as we move through the next few days, as we have secured several high-ranking elected officials from Washington, D.C. and elsewhere across our country who will be joining us today and as we move through the latter part of the broadcast week. Given the fact that, I get to do something that I've always wanted to do since I was a small child. And, Scout's honor. My mom will confirm all of the things in which I'm about to say. As a young person playing the Nintendo gaming system, I'd be the one who was... and who would, turn down the volume of the TV and then broadcast as, a 10, 11, 12-year-old kid, what I was witnessing on the television screen, whether it be through video games or watching a ball game with my dad. When my parents' friends would come over, they'd be hanging out in the backyard and, they'd, ask me if I would like to give them a mock broadcast. And it was something that... carried with me through the years in which I strayed off the straight and narrow. And then it wasn't until college when I really started to think about what was going to play out after, earning a degree and graduating that, Wilmington, North Carolina popped up on the radar. And the rest, as they say, is history. So while we take, of course, this opportunity very seriously and understand, the role that we try and play here each and every day in informing you, giving you opinions that you may not hear anywhere else, providing the platform for those elected or otherwise to provide their thoughts on the issues of the day. It's no surprise that you're excited and giddy the night before, particularly if you've done it the way Chad has in years past, to get another opportunity to jump in on here, even at 7 o'clock in the morning. Because for myself, the way the sleep schedule goes, we get Sophia down every night and, trying to keep one eye open, one eye half shut as, my wife is running through a recap and rehash of her day and then, what we've got planned for the day ahead after, we're able to sign off the air and get back into home life. One eye open, one eye, way out. And, oftentimes you're probably a punch in the back saying, hey, you listening? But it's almost, on target every morning. There are certain minutes and hours that I wake up just to see what time it is, see how much sleep I have left before, we get down here to the office to prepare for the morning program, which launches, as you know, just a few minutes after 7 o'clock each morning. And no matter what the feeling is, whether I'm a little tired or I slept too much, I'm hungover. Did I say that? No matter what's going on, personally for myself, to be able to jump out on this platform each and every day and deliver the most entertaining and informative news talk program anywhere in the Cape Fear region. I mean, you can just pinch me. I will say that, there hasn't been a day that I've worked in my life over the past several years, given this opportunity here at the Big Talker FM for what now? Almost 4.5 years. And in addition to all the other things that I've been able to piece together through this region and all the connections and the relationships that I've been able to build, whether it be down in South Carolina with Coastal, their university, and being able to sign on, as I did just a week ago, for their upcoming football season, once again with the Chanticleer Sports Network, moving into my 6th year with them. my relationship over with UNCW and their athletics department, WWAY, and some of the work I do with them. I mean, there are very few people in this world, frankly, and as big of a scale or as small as we may be here in this mid-sized market. To me, this is an amazing thing that we've been able to piece together over the better part of 4.5 years at the Big Talker. But by and large, my entire adult life, I've been able to do, well, what I've set out to do. Not always knowing where it was going at times, or if we were kind of stuck in the mud. And who knows how long this will last ultimately. But I got to say, waking up with that excitement every morning, I could affirm Chad's thoughts yesterday as he was a little giddy the night before, prior to jumping on the air to filling in for me on Monday. I have that feeling every single day, and it is a very cool thing. I wanted to start off on a glass half full type of moment prior to getting into all of the news of the day. And why is that? Well, as the new school year looms, debates over mask mandates are stirring anger, confusion, frustration. A lot of folks pointing the finger at one another, and here we are 17 months into the BS COVID-19 Chinese Communist virus pandemic. I haven't said that in a while. Wanted to rip that off the tongue nice and early here this morning. That folks are about as confused as they've been from the very get-go, from the onset. Yesterday, there were multiple groups of parents and others in front of the New Hanover County Board of Education. One group calling for masks to be optional this upcoming school year. New Hanover County has yet to decide on that policy, which will be discussed later on tonight at their all-virtual Board of Education meeting. Pender County has opted to go optional. We'll see if that stays in place. Brunswick County has yet to make a decision as well. One group out yesterday at the Board of Education calling for masks to be optional. The other, of course, looking to implement a mandate to require face coverings for all students, faculty, and staff, as recommended by the governor through what he calls his toolkit, put together by the Department of Health and Human Services, and then all the way up the chain to the CDC. So the Board of Education in New Hanover County will meet tonight. It'll be all virtual once again. And why? Well, according to a news release that was sent out late last week, one of the board members has COVID. And apparently the other colleagues on the board were exposed because of that, and they are all in quarantine, I guess, which has forced this meeting to go virtual ahead of a big decision surrounding the district's mask policy moving through the start of the school year. Across the rest of the state, there are about 24 or so, from what have been able to gather, that have already gone forth and have made those policies optional. There have been others, as I just read a moment ago. For instance, the Craven County School Board voted last night to require students and staff in grades K through 8 to wear masks, while masks would be optional for high school students. So we knew once Governor Cooper announced, last week, that he would be allowing the mask mandate to expire, that all hell was going to break loose. And what do you know? It's about as chaotic as it's been since the onset of the pandemic, going back to March of last year. The, of course, mixed messages haven't really helped. We talk about, the vaccines and the new Delta variant. When we talk about how these vaccines have been used, politically from the get-go. It's really been a big concern for a lot of people, the way in which this is handled from the top and how we move forward. The pitting people against one another to require, an injection, frankly, that we don't know whether or not it works. That's not to say that it isn't preventing many people from dealing with some of the worst of COVID if you can track the virus. Because, in fact, we now know that if you are vaccinated, you still, yes, can contract the virus. As we just heard yesterday from South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, who announced that he has tested positive for COVID. Now, he says that he's glad he got the shot because he thinks if he did not, his mild symptoms would be much worse. Now we're talking about an older man as compared to, say, myself, middle-aged, generally healthy, no underlying conditions, ran into the virus, when things were still relatively unknown back in June of last year, dealt with mild symptoms. And by mild, I say, I had a fever, aches and pains, a headache, not really a cough. I had a cough for about a day or two as my body was battling and my immune system was fighting back, and dealt with some underlying symptoms days after as far as taste and smell went. But for all intents and purposes here, a year later, feel healthy as an ox. And I've been hesitant to get the jab. My wife, my mother-in-law, my grandparents, they have gotten the vaccine, among others in my family. But to me, it's the mixed messaging that has been the most confusing, which has, of course, brought hesitancy to me and to others who are trying to look at this as objectively as possible. Message one, get the vaccine so you don't get COVID. Months later, message two, get the vaccine because you'll still get it, but it won't be as bad. So again, we're not judging or telling you whether or not you should line up to get the vaccine, or if you have, that you were in the wrong. But you can see why people may be hesitant due to the mass confusion when it comes to the messaging. Because it was 16 months ago we were being told we had to shut the country down and the world down for all intents and purposes to stop the spread, to flatten the curve. And then it went to, what we saw kind of play out as far as an entire shutdown, now dealing with some of the consequences of shutting everything down. And frankly, some are telling us that basically we're in no better place we are today than when we were this time last year. As we move through the program here this morning, we've got a great group of guests, including one concerned parent who's going to phone in here in about 10 minutes, who is part of the group of parents who were out there yesterday at the New Hanover County Board of Education, calling for masks to be optional this upcoming academic year. We'll hear from that parent here in just a few minutes. Representative Greg Murphy of North Carolina's 3rd Congressional District will also be with us this morning, just after 8 o'clock. Dr. Greg Murphy, MD, a medical doctor and also congressman in the Greenville area. He'll be with us just after 8 o'clock, giving us his thoughts on COVID, how it's been handled, where we are now. Of course, we've got this mess going on at the southern border. Frankly, it's being completely ignored by most of the news media and many in Congress. Caught a bunch of videos yesterday out of McAllen, Texas. Border facilities being overrun, many at over 500% capacity. Border Patrol busing migrants to Catholic charities in McAllen, Texas, getting a shower, getting a meal, and then being brought to the airport or a bus station to go wherever they please throughout the country. Oh, back to the mixed messaging. We've got folks coming in from all over the world through our southern border because we've laid out the red carpet and opened the gate in the middle of a health pandemic at the tune of over 1 million people since the beginning of this year, in the middle of a health pandemic, apparently. And, well, for all intents and purposes, we're bringing them in, getting them a shower, getting them in a meal, and then sending them on their way to various locations across the country without any sort of tabs on, well, any sort of illnesses, sicknesses, or viruses that they may have contracted, in addition to all of the other issues that come along with just releasing 1 million plus people back into the population coming in from places unknown. But nothing to see here. No theatrics, no politicians going to the southern border and creating all of a made-for-TV drama event the way we saw Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez during the Trump administration. None of that. Just nothing to see here. Well, have you heard that down in Mexico last week began refusing to accept certain groups of migrant families who were caught at the southern border? Who would have thought? Mexico has barred the United States from sending migrant families back across the border using their country's emergency measures put in place at the start of the pandemic to prohibit a great number of non-Mexican migrant families from returning to Mexico, which ultimately will force Border Patrol to release more of these folks from unknown areas around the world back into the U.S. because we lack space at our existing facilities to hold the thousands of people coming into custody daily. It doesn't add up when we talk about, those at the top telling American citizens that we need to mask up and potentially prepare for maybe more lockdowns while you're releasing 1 million or so people into the country without any sort of understanding as far as where they came from, how they got here, and any of the health conditions that they may be dealing with as they get into the country. We'll talk with Representative Greg Murphy on those topics when he joins us from North Carolina's 3rd Congressional District in the second hour. U.S. Senator Thom Tillis will also be with us. We'll talk about this 2,000-plus page infrastructure bill that is being hashed out in Washington, D.C., one that Senator Tillis has supported, or at least has expressed support with his procedural vote to move forward with this infrastructure bill at the tune of over $1 trillion. We'll hear from Senator Thom Tillis in the second hour of our show. Attorney Tom Goolsby also in the holding pattern with us as well here this morning, as he is every Tuesday morning here on the Big Talker FM. We've hit the bottom of the hour. Our call-in number is 910-299-7535.
As Wilmington's leader in restorative and regenerative medicine, the Frank Institute specializes in health optimization. Simply put, we use in-depth evaluations and lab testing to determine the best treatments for each patient. So whether you're suffering from an unseen hormonal imbalance or a simple vitamin deficiency, the Frank Institute is ready to get you back to better living. Call us at 910-679-8534 or fill out our symptom survey online at frankinstitute.com. Because at the Frank Institute, you live, we help.
Attention patriots, listen in to hear President Trump explain why Ted Budd is the right choice for United States Senate.
There's somebody that I think is very special, somebody that I've worked with, always been with me. This man's a great politician, but more importantly, he's somebody that loves the state of North Carolina. He loves the country. But this gentleman is going to be your next senator. He's going to be somebody that you're going to be so proud of. He will fight like hell. He will fight like nobody fights. And a lot of you don't know him that well, but you're going to know him. Ted Budd.
I am giving him my complete and total endorsement. We're going to work with him. We're going to campaign with him. You can't pick people that have already lost 2 races. You can't pick people that have already lost 2 races and do not stand for our values. So I'm going with Congressman Ted Budd, complete and total endorsement.
I'm Ted Budd, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Ted Budd for Senate. See the video at tedbudd.com.
Hey everyone, Ben Hawkins here with Cross Country Mortgage. Rates are still at historic lows, and there has never been a better time to purchase your dream home or refinance your existing. With over 300 loan products including conventional, FHA, VA, USDA, renovation, and jumbo, we are certain we have the right loan product for you and your family. Call me today to be pre-qualified to make the offer on your next dream home. 910-352-3373 or visit my website at lendwithben.com.
Hello, I'm Jeff Rivenbark with WWAY News. The White House is moving to pressure state and local governments to swiftly adopt policies to protect renters after an eviction moratorium expired over the weekend. Millions of Americans could be pushed out of their homes. In a statement yesterday, the White House emphasized the federal government has provided $46.5 billion to keep renters where they are. It also accused states and cities of being too slow to act and getting that aid to those in need. President Joe Biden is drawing criticism even from his own party that he was slow to address the end of the moratorium. A big crowd gathered at the New Hanover County Board of Education building last night, with some advocating for and others against a mask mandate in schools. The New Hanover County Educational Justice Team held a press conference last night promoting the wearing of masks in schools throughout the county, but not everyone outside the district office last night agrees with that. The New Hanover County Board of Education is set to meet tonight to discuss the issue. In New Hanover County, the Health and Human Services Board is recommending COVID-19 vaccinations be mandatory for eligible New Hanover County employees. If passed by commissioners, it would mean employees would have a certain amount of time to get vaccinated or would have to mask, social distance, and test weekly for coronavirus. New Hanover County staff will meet today to discuss the details. The county should have a decision by the end of the week. And 1 year ago today, people were beginning final preparations as Hurricane Isaias quickly approached the Cape Fear. Isaias made landfall as a Category 1 hurricane in Ocean Isle Beach just after 11 p.m. Isaias had maximum sustained winds near 85 miles per hour and left millions of dollars in damage across the Cape Fear. For more on these stories, head over to WWAYTV3.com. I'm Jeff Rivenbark. Have a great day.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. I'm WWAY meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Storm Track 3 forecast. We'll grab the rain gear before heading out the door today. It's going to be a wet one, especially this afternoon. We're going to see mostly cloudy skies and multiple rounds of scattered showers over the course of the afternoon hours as well. Locally heavy at times. We do have flash flood watches that go into effect at noon, lasting through midnight, and our temperatures are going to be cooler than where they've been the past couple of days. We only top off in the low 80s and drop to the upper 60s, low 70s late tonight. Get your full forecast from WWAY and WWAYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by Two Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to twomenandatruck.com. twomenandatruck.com.
All right, as you heard Jeff Rivenbark delivering the local news update just a moment ago. Last night, a number of folks were out in front of the Board of Education building here in New Hanover County ahead of tonight's all-virtual meeting. And as a reminder, the meeting went all virtual after one of the board members tested for COVID apparently, the scuttlebutt is, we hate to play, the rumor mill game, but we are a bunch of schoolgirls. But nonetheless, that one of the more outspoken board members who had been vaccinated and had been pushing masks and preventing and unwilling or refusing to get on board last year to get our kids back into the classroom. Well, she was the one who had tested positive and then, exposed the rest of the board. And they're apparently now in quarantine, and thankfully it seems like they're all okay. Because, yes, even if we wholeheartedly disagree with the viewpoints of others in our country, we still wish them well when it comes to their health and general safety. We don't have to, and it's ridiculous that we even have to make those sorts of statements these days, but, we have to dot all of our I's and cross all of our T's these days. So we want to preface all of the criticisms that we're going to levy on someone by saying, yes, we generally wish for folks to be healthy and safe and secure in the land of the free and the home of the brave. But we knew once, of course, Governor Cooper came out with his announcement last week that he'd be ending the mask mandate and that he would be making and giving the decision rights to the local districts in regards to what to do in terms of masks and other, social distancing and the other protocols that have, become normal, unfortunately, in some settings that all hell was going to break loose. And, it wasn't just a day or two later after Governor Cooper announced that the CDC then came down the pipeline and gave out new recommendations, throwing everything into a tailspin. So with the upcoming academic year looming, debates over mask mandates stirring a lot of anger, confusion, frustration. And there were multiple groups of parents and others in front of the Board of Education building yesterday here in New Hanover County, again ahead of tonight's BOE meeting where the mask policy will be discussed. There are about 24 or so districts already here in the state of North Carolina that have moved to make the mask optional for the upcoming school year. Others have gone down the mandate pathway, and some have used, we call it, I guess now, the hybrid approach. In Craven County, for instance, they want their kids to mask up at K through 8, but high schoolers will have the option. Right now, Josie Barnhart, is with us, and she's been outspoken since the beginning of this pandemic, trying to provide a little, not only level-headedness, but perspective from a parent's point of view, along with someone who has also served as an educator in her professional career. Josie, are you with us? Good morning. I hope you're well.
I am. Good morning. Thank you. I am. And I just want to say thank you for just reiterating the safety, that we care about the safety and health of everybody, even if we disagree, because absolutely we wish no ill will on anybody. So, but thank you again for having me this morning and just to talk about this, because it's a very heated debate. I've heard from a couple board members, and I invited them all to join us this morning, so I hope some of them are listening, and I welcome them to call in and speak if they so desire. But I've heard from a couple board members, this has been the most heated issue that they've got opinions about from parents and community members, as you can imagine.
Yeah, it's this is one of those situations where I do not envy those who decide to jump into the fray of public service, because you're hearing it from all angles right now, as they were just a couple of weeks ago, with the critical race theory discussion that you've been a part of as well. So it's great to see people involved, but you hate to see it boil over to the way it did, as reported yesterday, in front of the Board of Education meeting, as things started to get heated, from what I've read, according to some of the news reports.
Right, and I was there, and we met there starting around 4:15, 4:30. So, the group of parents and community members that met, there was a large group. I think there was around 60 or 70 people that showed up with kids, mine included. And, it was just, it's kind of like a gut wrench almost, as a parent perspective, of feeling like we're not going to have a call to audience and being able to be present to have a conversation, because, you know, you become more human to somebody when you're actually in front of them and speaking to them one-on-one and sharing your personal convictions of why you feel this is what's best for your child. And so that's a really moving experience to be able to participate in. And Ms. Justice and Ms. Walker, the past few meetings have said how important it is to have a call to audience and to make sure that our voices are heard. So when the meeting was announced that it was going to be virtual, there was shortly after I saw circulating that there was going to be a press conference, and they from the New Hanover County Educational Justice, and they were going to be advocating for mask mandating. So basically, I put on my hat of numbers of people that reporters and stuff, and I said, please, can you come out and give a parent voice, because I don't have a platform. I'm a parent. Like you said, I've been very vocal, but I just felt like it was necessary for parents and for kids to give their side who want the option for choice, and to say, and even moving forward, choice not only in mask, but potentially vaccinations and mandates and those sorts of things. So it's really just being able to make a decision when you're presented all sides of an issue.
Well, with that said, given that you've tried to be as versed as all we have tried to do over the last year or so, trying to gather all the information, take all the smoke, and eliminate all the outside noise, and just try and hone in and figure out what's best for you and ultimately your family, including your children. I think it's been the approach everyone's tried to take, trying to look at this from a serious way, while also having considerations for others and the opinions that are out there. So as this whole year has progressed, and now we get to this point where, well, we're getting ready for another upcoming school year, and we're still dealing with some of these policies and mandates that people want to put on our children, school members, and faculty and staff. Where do you line up at this point, in the game? Because it's been a long game here, and it doesn't seem like we're heading even into the fourth quarter at this point, which is very sad.
So I distinctly remember, and it was with two separate board members this spring, having the conversation of, I don't want to have to be fighting against any COVID protocols in the fall. And it was like a verbal acknowledgement, like, me either. And so the fact that we're even here is frustrating and hard. And the reality is there is so much more than one solution for everybody. And so I am on the side of parents should decide what's best for their kids and their health decisions. And so for some kids and for some parents, unfortunately, their child has taken their own life. Their child now has anxiety, depression, is struggling with mental health issues, and that's not okay. And I would never judge a parent for saying, you know what, my child is fine without a mask. I would not judge them and say, this is what you're doing wrong. And we've gotten to a point in society that it is acceptable to outwardly judge, and almost in a way encouraged by our government, which is just a whole different issue entirely, to outwardly judge somebody based on whether or not you decide to mask. And I am frustrated with it. I have been one who, in our family, we abided very well by the protocols for a long time. And this past summer has been great because we've actually been able to go places and to do things. And I've seen the joy on my kids' faces, and I've seen them kind of refoster their self and their own personalities. And as a parent, that makes my heart really happy. I do understand. I've heard from people who they're like, well, let's just keep the mandate in place. I don't want to go virtual. I hear you. I hear parents that are saying that. And so I've read the toolkit, and I want to address that. I've reached out to Ms. Barnum, and I imagine that she's going to do a great presentation. She always has the data and tries to present it very well. But in the toolkit, it says, for unvaccinated exposed individuals within 6 feet for 15 minutes is supposed to be a quarantine exposure. So let's just take elementary kids because none of them can be vaccinated. So there's not any mixing. They're already in a cohort of one room for the day, and they do everything with their class. Lunchtime alone is more than 15 minutes. So if there was a COVID exposure, that would already be prompted to happen. And so what I've been talking to people is whether it's mandated by the school saying it's mandated or whether it's a choice, there is a possibility of COVID exposure in quarantine. So I do want to point that out. And I encourage Ms. Barnum to correct me if I'm misreading that or mistaken that. I have reached out to a few board members and they also wanted to ask clarification about that, because I think that's the biggest thing right now, is that's one of the fears of not having it mandated, because, parents are working. It was really hard for virtual schooling, especially on working parents. And so for me, that's probably been the biggest justifying of like, well, if we can do this with keeping them in school. And then the second thing that I would say is we're not the first to try this. And I think that's where it's scary to admit, but there are places in different states around the country that have had mask optional since last September or last October or August when they started school, August or September. And they fared just as well, and in some cases better than what we did. And so for me to sit here and see that, I've reached out to, I started reaching out to random districts. I know that's surprising to hear, to try to get data and knowledge from other people, Joe, for me. But I had two districts, one from Texas and one from Florida, who actually sent me back their data. And I forwarded that on, and I asked them their protocols in place, and they said masks were optional. One district had masking on transportation because there's more commingling on buses, just with ages and different things like that. And so I sent that, but looking at the data, there was not a huge surge and spread. And so I think that's important to note, is that there is data out there. North Carolina doesn't have that data because it hasn't been allowed, but there is data out there for schools that were in session with mask optional and low COVID spread. So I think that's the two biggest acknowledgement is, one, we don't want to see going to virtual, and two, we need to acknowledge that this has happened and that there is data that we can look at objectively and not emotionally.
And I think at the end of the day, what is the most frustrating part of this is that, for all intents and purposes, when we, rang out for the year, beginning of summer, that we were in some sort of, normal mode, in that kids were getting back into the classroom. Yeah, there were still, certain policies put in place, but as the summer, ramped up and the restrictions eased, we were moving full steam ahead. And the mindset was, we're not going to look back, and we need to learn to live with this thing and move forward. Yet here we are, just a few months later, and having the same debates and arguments that we were having, 5-6 months ago.
Right. And it's frustrating to me because when I look at the data, like, our governor sat and gave a press conference last week, I guess, and, talking about the unvaccinated being more infected and stuff. And I keep going to our dashboard, our North Carolina dashboard, and I looked yesterday and it was 1% under the age of 18 was hospitalized, 1%. And so in North Carolina, it's been about 13% of the cases have been made up of under 18. Now, granted, there is a subcategory of that age that is able to get vaccinated, 12 to 18-year-olds. And so I keep looking to see ages, and because that's really what we need to be looking at, is like, okay, if it is a younger population that we're seeing in the hospital, what are those ages? Tell me where those are at, because I think that's where the fear is. It's like, okay, well, we're seeing a surge. Are we seeing a surge in hospitalizations? Are we seeing a surge in deaths? Is it both? Like, where is it? And show me that data, because when I go to our North Carolina State website, the hospitalizations and the ages of deaths are very, very few. And so I would like that. I get frustrated that isn't acknowledged and addressed. But then the flip side is I also have respect for parents who want to mask their kids to potentially reduce their risk exposure. And I have respect for that. You know, when we're in a grocery store or we're in a park or we're in a play place or we're, you know, at the movies, if people are wearing a mask, I'm not scoffing and mocking people. Neither are my kids. We're respecting people's space, and we have to coexist. And I feel like right now school is the only opportunity that potentially it'll be mandated. And I just don't think that it's fair to parents. And it worries me if schools have this power now, what's going to stop them later from, you know, letting the parents have a voice.
Josie Barnhart is with us. She's joined us on various occasions over the past year to share her insights, particularly as it relates to the schools, some of the policies that had been in place, where we are now. And, you know, I think what's baffling to a lot of people is how we've gotten to a point where at the very get-go and onset of all of this, it was we need to limit those who could potentially be hospitalized and could ultimately, you know, prove it to be fatal by contracting the virus, to now, you know, this mindset that we need to just rid anyone and everyone of potentially coming in contact with it. And that is a very wide and broad range when we talk about one end of the spectrum to the complete other. And that's what I think has a lot of people confused, frustrated, and frankly angry, you know, and enough sort of, you know, way of looking at this whole thing.
Well, and I think it's interesting because North Carolina has a state requirement to fit the needs of social emotional health in kids. We have a requirement, and we've talked about SEL, social emotional learning. We have a curriculum for it, but to not even address that elephant in the room, that masks do have a social emotional effect on our kids, is irresponsible of us as a district, as administrators, to look at and say, these are, I mean, you have kids who are naturally just shy and being told, what? I can't hear you. I have 3 kids, you know, a 2, 4, and 6-year-old. And when they have to repeat over and over and over because I can't hear what they're saying or articulating, they get frustrated. They want to give up. They shut down. And so, you know, it is this balance. I mean, that's just one example. It is this balance of being able to empower kids and stay safe. But like to have that acknowledgement that this symbol has become such a burden on some kids and families, like I said, so much so that, you know, we have seen the mental health crisis just skyrocket through this pandemic, and we're now just seeing those effects. So I did try to take a step back, and I started looking over CDC guidelines, and I went back to H1N1, and that was like 2009, 2010, and I was like, I wonder, what did the CDC say back then? And there were some similar things that they had suggested. They had suggested cohort groups. They had obviously cleaning and spacing. And one of the things that I found very interesting in this is they said, we openly acknowledge that the positive impact of mitigating this virus could also have negative implications beyond intention. And I thought that was super interesting because I think that's where we kind of are in this pandemic, is we are realizing the negative implications are so much harder on some than others. Because for some kids, you're right, it's just a mask. It's no big deal. Like some kids have no problem at all with it. It's totally fine. And that's great. I'm not taking any issue with that. But for others, it is a really big deal. And to acknowledge that it's a big deal for them, and for their parents to be able to say that without being ridiculed or mocked or saying that we don't care about other people being healthy and safe, it's frustrating. And so I went a little bit further in that data gathering, and one of the organizations they said to reach out to figure out some of those negative implications, they said your local health department, which we did a good job at most of our meetings. The local health department was there at Board of Education, but they also said and interact with families of the students. And I find that very telling to say, yeah, because parents do know their kids and they do see a different side than what the school sees. And so I hope that our board, I know that torn because it's not one or the other. Mm-hmm. We all want everybody to be safe. There is more than just masking as mitigating circumstances. Mm-hmm. And so especially with our younger kids and developing social emotional learning and reading facial cues and expressions, sounding out letters and words, there needs to be an option that makes that successful, because our kids need to be able to learn academically and grow developmentally without a mask in some instances.
Josie Barnhart with us here this morning, a concerned parent, educator, and someone who has expressed her thoughts not only here on this platform over the past several months, but also, of course, in front of the New Hanover County Board of Education, who will be meeting later on tonight to discuss the upcoming mask policies for the academic year that is just a couple of weeks away. Josie, thanks so much for your extended time here this morning. Of course, we'll follow it, and feel free to call back whenever you'd like.
Thanks, Joe. Have a great day.
And you do as well. We talk about some of the unintended consequences. She mentioned mental health, anxiety, depression, isolation. Well, how about retention of information and proficiency? Well, new report shedding light on the academic, social, and mental health damage caused by school closures due to the pandemic. Report released July 27th by McKinsey & Company examined test scores for 1.6 million elementary school students across 40 states in the spring of 2021, contrasted the results with scores for students before the pandemic. The results now, on average, pandemic-era children are 4 months behind in reading and 5 months behind in math. On average, 70% of our kids within our public schools are not proficient at grade level in reading, writing, or math. And now they're 4 or 5 months behind and potentially, falling even further behind some of those levels with decisions on the horizon. As I spoke with one teacher, again, just one educator the other day when Governor Cooper made that announcement that he'd be letting the mandate expire and it would be the local districts to make the decisions. Spoke with one teacher at the middle school level and, frankly, to the left of the political spectrum. And she has had enough with the masks for many of the same reasons why Josie just laid out for us here this morning as well. We'll see what happens tonight here in New Hanover County. I know things got a little heated yesterday in front of the Board of Education building. Brunswick County still to make a decision. Pender County has gone optional. We'll see what plays out in the next several days and weeks leading up to the opening bell for the upcoming academic year. We've hit the top of the hour. We will speak with a medical doctor when we get back, who also happens to be the congressman of North Carolina's 3rd District. His name is Representative Greg Murphy. He joins us after the break here on the Big Talker FM.
According to research, 82% of people remember radio ads. That means that 82% of you listening right now will remember that this is an ad for ZipRecruiter. If you're hiring, 82% of you will recall that ZipRecruiter makes hiring faster and easier. And 82% of you will note that you can try ZipRecruiter for free today. But you have to go to ZipRecruiter.com/free. Yes, free. 82% of you will keep in mind that ZipRecruiter's technology finds qualified people for your job and actively invites them to apply.
Is that you? Who are you talking to?
82% of you will also know that I, live with my mom. But the most important thing to note is that ZipRecruiter works. In fact, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Will you be part of the 82% who remember where you can try ZipRecruiter for free? It's ZipRecruiter.com/free. Again, that exclusive link is ZipRecruiter.com/free. How much? Free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
keeping Oak Island informed. The Big Talker 106.7 FM WFBT, Carolina Beach.
Senator tests positive for COVID-19.
News that Senator Lindsey Graham tested positive quickly jolted through the Capitol and sparked an hours-long scramble to figure out who else might have been exposed, which only escalated after sources confirmed that the South Carolina Republican attended an outdoor event on Senator Joe Manchin's houseboat over the weekend with other senators. Graham's breakthrough case, the first known instance among senators, comes as the chamber has largely loosened social distancing restrictions in recent months, with at least 96 of the 100 senators vaccinated. Bernie Bennett in Washington.
And Graham describes his symptoms as mild, something like a sinus infection. On Twitter, he writes, "Without vaccination, I'm certain I would not feel as well as I do." Louisiana, the first state to reimpose a statewide indoor mask mandate. Number of cities around the country doing so as well as the Delta variant spreads. Dr. Catherine O'Neill works at a Louisiana hospital and says that there they've run out of beds.
These are the darkest days of this pandemic.
Medical experts insisting the vaccinated are far more protected. Yesterday, the U.S. finally reached President Biden's goal of getting at least one shot in the arms of 70% of American adults. American gymnastics superstar Simone Biles takes the bronze at the Tokyo Olympics.
Biles delivered during the women's balance beam final a week after taking herself out of several competitions to focus on her mental health. The now 7-time Olympic medalist altered her routine a bit while dealing with a mental block surrounding twisting, instead ending with a double pike dismount. No twisting required. She posted a score of 14.0. China finished first and second. I'm Julie Walker.
Watching Wall Street this morning, Dow futures up 161 points. NASDAQ futures 25 points higher. More on these stories at townhall.com.
If you're attacked by a bear, a dog will throw himself into the mouth of the bear to save you. Dogs are dogs. They pour out their love onto you. Before long, you can't live without them. I have a chocolate cocker spaniel named Lady and a blackmouth cur. He's about 120 pounds, and his name is Arlo. My little cocker, her coat's as soft as a stuffed animal. They're both real soft coats, and my dogs don't have any health problems because they're eating what they need to eat.
DINOVITE.com.
Dynavite is like pouring a multivitamin right onto their food.
The omega-3 fatty acids, flaxseed, zinc, alfalfa, the digestive enzymes that are cooked out of regular dog food.
We'll be scooping our Dynavite onto the food, then squirting the liquor chops and the fish oil. They start salivating.
Dynavite is nutrition.
You won't believe how happy your dog will be.
It's a lot of responsibility owning a dog. I get my Dynavite at DINOVITE.com.
The United Nations says Afghan civilians bearing the brunt of the latest fighting between the Taliban and government troops.
The UN called on both sides to do more to protect civilians, warning that the impact if they failed would be catastrophic. Thousands had been displaced, it said, describing a population living in fear. The Taliban ground offensive and government airstrikes were causing most harm to civilians, it added. It also highlighted concerns about hospitals and clinics and people's homes being damaged or occupied by fighters. In Lashkargah, some doctors say they're overwhelmed and supplies are running low.
That's a BBC's Jill McGivering. Turkish fire crews pressing ahead with a week-long battle against fires in forests and villages on the country's southern coast. President Erdogan's government facing increased criticism over its apparent poor response and inadequate preparedness for the fires. News and analysis at townhall.com.
The champ is here! The champ is here! The champ is here! The champ is here!
Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's amore. When the world seems to shine like you've had too much wine, that's amore.
moving into the second hour of our program here on this Tuesday morning. Once again, thanks to our friend Chad Adams for filling in for us yesterday. As we get nice and cozy atop the Murchison building overlooking Battleship, North Carolina, for the second hour of our show here until 10 o'clock on this Tuesday morning. Again, later on tonight, one of our local school districts will be meeting, ultimately making a decision on some of the policies for the upcoming academic year as it relates to face coverings and masks. We know that schools in Pender County, for now, have made it optional. Brunswick County still yet to be determined, and that decision will fall in the hands of the new Hanover County School Board members a little later on this evening. Joining us now is Representative Greg Murphy. He's the representation in North Carolina's 3rd Congressional District in the House of Representatives up in Washington, D.C. Dr. Murphy, it's a pleasure once again to speak with you, and I hope your morning is off to a good start, sir.
Good morning, Joe. Yeah, it's doing very well. I hope yours is too.
Yeah, we're hanging tight and just trying to absorb what the news pundits and everyone else is trying to tell us. Trying to look through all of the noise and come to a conclusion that ultimately, as it relates to COVID, will be the best for our family and loved ones. We've spoken at length over the past year. From your point of view as a medical doctor, so give us, as a medical doctor and as one who, works in Washington, D.C., where we're at. Provide some clarity for us here this morning, would you, if you could?
Yeah, Jay, we had hoped that we were going to be on the other side of this, and I think we were. This new variant, the Delta variant, which actually was detected in India back in December and really wreaked havoc with that country, spread to Britain and now is in the United States. It makes up about 85% of all the cases that are going on. And this truly is a problem. The hospitals are getting full again. But if you look at the hospitalizations that we see, 97% of those hospitalized and sick these days are those who have not been vaccinated. This goes to say that still, if you have been vaccinated, it does not mean you can't get COVID. And I've said that all along. It doesn't mean that the virus magically bumps off of you. It means that your clinical response, how sick you are, is going to be much, much, much less severe. But we're back in another surge, if you will, and I hope it's our 4th and final surge as we move forward. I've said this from day one, just from the point of a physician. I think people should get vaccinated. We can talk about mandates if you want to. It's just my personal opinion that this is safe and effective, and I think we need to move forward. It's much better, in my opinion, to take the risk of being vaccinated, which there are some risks, there's a risk with any medicine, than actually get COVID, especially if you're over the age of 55.
Well, and how about for folks who may have already come in contact with COVID and feel that there hasn't been enough talk about building a sort of natural immunity, as it were, to this sort of virus, as we have fought many other viruses that we've come in contact with since the beginning of time.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a very, very good point, Joe. I think I was reading an article yesterday that talked about the evolution of this. Now, in my opinion, and I'll say this 100 times, I've said it for the last year plus, I think this came out of the lab in Wuhan. I think it was a genetically engineered virus by the Chinese. Perhaps it came out mistakenly, and I think that's what happened. But this virus mutates much more quickly than other ones do. That's at least what my infectious disease friends tell me. And so we're going to see this happen more and more. What the hope is that with enough natural immunity, with enough vaccination, that this turns into basically a seasonal cold kind of thing. If it does not, hopefully, we would love it to disappear completely. But I think that would be hopeful thinking. But I think we're hopefully going to get to a point where there's going to be enough immunity for folks that it will just be a seasonal kind of thing, or just something that is treated like the common cold.
Well, with that said, there's a lot of people making a lot of money off of this. We hear from Pfizer just last week that they're going to be pushing a third vaccination as a booster, as it were, along with the fact that they also just announced $85 billion in revenue that they've gathered from the vaccination process that has gone into place. So you think about pharmaceutical companies and their history in recent history having to pay out, maybe not Pfizer but others, massive amounts of money in lawsuits for, we'll say, chemicals and baby powder that can provide and create cancer in certain groups of people, the whole opioid epidemic. And you see the hesitancy, at least trying to play devil's advocate for a minute, as to why some people may be not lining up on the side of trusting some of these big companies and the politicians pushing these sorts of things on people.
Yeah, Joe, I mean, I can understand that. I'm not going to dismiss that whatsoever. I understand that. And this is why I put my doctor's hat on. I take my congressional hat off. I put my doctor's hat on because I've looked at the science myself. I haven't, done this as a means of pushing a political view or anything else. I've done it as a physician. And yeah, sure, there are some really big scars on the pharmaceutical industry. Pfizer did not take any of the warp speed money that was doled out to some of these companies to get their vaccines. But they said, yeah, we will take the money afterwards if you purchase it. We won't use it to help develop it. And, I cannot say, as I said before, I don't believe there should be mandates on this. I believe this is a medication, and just like any other medication, that a patient needs to sit down and discuss the risks and benefits with their physician, with their doctor, as to whether it's right for them, and then make the decision based upon that.
Representative Greg Murphy with North Carolina's 3rd Congressional District, and then Congressman, on the same sort of line of thinking here from the political standpoint. Some feel that this is just a way in which folks are trying to control the population, that we're trying to create maybe another level of dependency on government. You look at what's going on the southern border, saying, hey, if you're telling us to mask up, mandate, potentially go back into some sort of restrictions and lockdowns while scattering out 1 million people across the country from parts unknown, doesn't seem to add up.
Oh, I agree with that completely, Joe. This is the height of hypocrisy, but that's been in the hallmark of this particular administration. We don't want a pipeline in the United States, but we're okay to help with the pipeline for Russia in Europe. It can go on and on and on. But the fact that you have to come into this country, if you fly into this country from another country, you have to present a negative COVID test. But if you overrun the border in the south, it doesn't matter at all. And we'll repopulate the area throughout the entire country when we're taking folks who've come in here illegally, not been tested, not been treated, not been quarantined, and they're able to just spread across the country. It is the height of hypocrisy.
Representative Greg Murphy once again with us from North Carolina's 3rd Congressional District. Congressman, in addition to COVID, there are other things going on in Washington, D.C., of course, whether it be the quote-unquote bipartisan infrastructure bill, as I mentioned, the situation at our southern border. When we talk about infrastructure and a 2,000-plus page bill, I think a lot of folks are miffed at the way Washington works, in that you could see support for something without actually reading the entire legislative text. In this case, 2,000-plus pages in a bill that goes to quote-unquote infrastructure. Now we're going to pass it before we read what's in it.
Yeah, Joe, this highlights really one of the issues that I don't think people understand. I really didn't understand it really until I got Washington, D.C. We talk about the swamp. We talk about term limits for elected officials, which I think we all should do. On the other hand, the real swamp in Washington, D.C. are not the elected officials. It's the bureaucracy. It's the people who are there, the bureaucrats who are there forever, the people who write these 2,000-page bills. And they're the ones that insert so much of this stuff. And you're right. I mean, how the heck can you vote on something that you've not completely read and studied? It's just unconscionable to think that that's actually occurring. But over in the Senate side, I'm going to actually speak with Thom Tillis later on today, get his thoughts about some other things. But the word infrastructure now no longer means what it means traditionally. Actually, I submitted a bill a couple months ago to actually define it in the congressional record. But, this is just nonsense upon nonsense. The good news, in my opinion, is that Nancy Pelosi now only has a three vote margin. And this is why they didn't ram through the rent moratorium last week. They couldn't get it through because people said enough is enough. We're paying people more to stay home to work, and they're not even using that money to pay rent. So it's the height of hypocrisy of what the Biden administration is doing, in my opinion.
And here in the state of North Carolina, we actually saw a jump in unemployment rates in June from the previous month. In our 15 metro areas, saw an increase. In fact, unemployment rates in the state of North Carolina increased in 99 of its counties in the month of June. Looking at some data put together by the North Carolina Department of Commerce, doesn't that just speak to the reasons why we need to limit the extra goodie as far as the package that's been provided to so many people for so long in terms of unemployment benefits?
Yeah, Joe, look at this. Look at this now. We have not record unemployment, but we have massive unemployment numbers. But at the same time, we have massive numbers of jobs available. How can that happen? How can that happen? It can't happen. It can only happen through an artificially created economic environment, which has been done by the federal government and actually extended by Cooper. And so, this is just absurd. And we're paying people to stay at home. We're throttling businesses at the very same time, which we should be actually unleashing the economy again. And so this is basically, again, to your point of keeping people saddled, keeping people dependent upon the government, and actually, in my opinion, just actually wreaking havoc with the economy. Again, you also look at the inflation numbers. Now, the Biden administration is finally admitting that what the processes that they've done have been inflationary and will continue to be so. So, which I believe is actually inflation is a tax on the poor disproportionately for sure. But the way that they've handled the economy, again, to try to get more dependence in the government is wreaking havoc with us all.
Representative Greg Murphy of North Carolina's 3rd Congressional District with us here this morning. Doctor, it's a pleasure as always, and I look forward to future conversations with you.
Great. Thanks so much, Joe. Take care.
We're 17 minutes past the hour here. Thanks to the congressman for phoning in up in the Greenville area, parts of the Crystal Coast in North Carolina's 3rd Congressional District. Great to have him a part of the program. Joins us once or twice a month to give us some of the details coming out of our nation's capital in Washington, D.C. When we get back, we'll hear from the other side of the chamber in Congress when U.S. Senator Thom Tillis joins the program after this timeout here on the Big Talker FM.
You keep saying you got something for me, something you call love, but confess.
Attention patriots, listen in to hear President Trump explain why Ted Budd is the right choice for United States Senate.
There's somebody that I think is very special, somebody that I've worked with, always been with me. This man's a great politician, but more importantly, he's somebody that loves the state of North Carolina. He loves the country. But this gentleman is going to be your next senator. He's going to be somebody that you're going to be so proud of. He will fight like hell. He will fight like nobody fights. And a lot of you don't know him that well, but you're going to know him. Ted Budd.
I am giving him my complete and total endorsement. We're going to work with him. We're going to campaign with him. You can't pick people that have already lost 2 races. You can't pick people that have already lost 2 races and do not stand for our values. So I'm going with Congressman Ted Budd, complete and total endorsement.
I'm Ted Budd, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Ted Budd for Senate. See the video at tedbudd.com.
I'm K.O. Davis from K.O.'s Coast to Coast Tree, and I want to be your tree man.
When your trees need cut, 2 letters to know. One is a K, the other is an O. K.O.
Tree man.
Proper trimming is the most important thing that you can do, so don't just hire anybody to do it. You need someone that knows what they're doing.
K.O.
Call the professionals at K.O.'s Coast to Coast Tree and visit KOTrees.com.
O'Leary's Automotive Repair has multiple locations in the area in Hampstead, Leland, the Myrtle Grove area, Ogden, and Wrightsboro. O'Leary's Automotive Repair, a trusted, locally owned business since 2006. 20 minutes past the hour here on the Big Talker FM. We thank Congressman Greg Murphy for joining us just a minute ago to provide us an update from the House of Representatives, North Carolina's 3rd Congressional District up in Washington, D.C. His viewpoints also as a medical doctor in terms of the pandemic. And right now, holding on the line patiently is U.S. Senator Thom Tillis. Senator, thanks so much for spending time with us this morning here on the Big Talker FM.
Good morning.
Senator, we are in the middle of a conversation right now in your chamber of Congress in terms of a 2,000-plus page infrastructure bill that you have voted in favor of as far as the procedural vote goes. Just give us your mindset behind your support for this bill.
Well, the one thing we wanted to do was to separate hard infrastructure, things that people in North Carolina can understand, roads, bridges, wastewater, sewer, and what they're trying to call infrastructure in this package that they'll pass without a single Republican vote. We wanted to propose something that was paid for and that could be a win for the American people in North Carolina and will benefit in terms of our bridges, roads, infrastructure, broadband to areas that we now know were really lacking during the pandemic as we move to digital, virtual work environments. We're going to continue to work on it. I voted to get on the bill. We're going to see amendments that could be damaging. We're also going to do some amendments to take a few of the components out if we can. But the goal here is to put downward pressure on the damaging, the spending and tax spree that they're about to go through later on this week or this weekend with tax increases somewhere around $1 trillion or $2 trillion, and spending it could be $3 trillion. We'll hold together there. We'll oppose it, and they'll have to deliver the votes if they want to get it done.
When we talk about roads, bridges, tunnels, airports, some other things that I think all Americans who maybe have driven across parts of our state or elsewhere around the country would say, yeah, we need massive investment at this. At what cost when it comes to a couple of $1 trillion here? What you have said just a moment ago, as far as other spending proposals that Democrats in the Senate, the House, and in Washington want to push forward that would take us in a very different direction. When we talk about the impact on the U.S. taxpayer at this point, it's been a year plus now where people have been struggling to maybe find ends meet or secure something as far as what their future looks like, and with inflation hitting us and maybe which some would consider a tax. Some are worried that this could put even more of a heavier weight on the shoulders of the taxpayers who've already dealt with enough over the past year and a half. How can you reassure them that these investments will be worth it moving into the future?
Well, two different pieces. I can assure them that the $550 billion infrastructure package doesn't produce inflationary pressure. For one thing, it's paid for, and anytime you put hard infrastructure in the ground, you end up getting economic benefit back. Now, we've got to separate. That's why it's so important for your listeners to separate a $550 billion package that's paid for with no tax increases from a $3 trillion package that's going to be paid for with about $2 trillion in taxes. They say they're only taxing the rich, but the people who are going to be hit the worst are the small businesses that are still struggling and working families. You're right. Inflation is a tax. The gas prices that have gone up about $1 a gallon are not going down because of Biden's energy policies or anti-energy policies for U.S. energy. So the American people have already taken a 5% pay cut with inflation that's going to continue, and I believe get worse once they pass this $3 trillion package, add it to the $1.9 trillion package that they passed back in January without a single Democratic vote. So I think the American people are going to understand it fairly quickly. They're going to see it at the pumps, they're going to see it at the grocery stores, and they're going to see it in their paychecks when they see taxes increase. And add it to that, the Democrats, again, without a single Republican vote, are planning to hire tens of thousands of additional auditors to go after not the big companies because they're audited 24/7. The medium-sized businesses, the small businesses are going to have basically tax squads out there, causing more pressure on them when they're just barely recovering from COVID. There's not a lot we can do. We're hoping we can get a Democrat vote to carve off so they reduce the taxes or not even get the bill passed. But there's not a single Republican in the U.S. Senate that's going to vote for that measure.
Senator Thom Tillis with us here this morning. Senator, one of the proposals that has caught my attention that may or may not end up in this infrastructure bill is a proposal known as the PRO Act, which, if implemented, would severely hamper my ability and the ability of millions of Americans to, seek out some of the side hustles, as it were, some of the additional independently contracted gigs that help provide either supplemental income or, really, help you provide a different revenue source as far as, your household. What are your thoughts on the PRO Act, and if it were to be implemented, how it would impact, as I said, millions of Americans out there?
Well, in the early negotiations for the $550 billion package, they were proposing that and something they call Davis-Bacon, and the Republicans said that we will not move forward with any of those provisions in the bill. I do think they're going to take another make another attempt with reconciliation. This is where it really gets complicated, though. We believe that we've got a legal case to kill a lot of those measures when they start negotiating with the parliamentarian. But we've made it very clear that we're not going to let them advance union interest in our infrastructure bill, and we're going to fight it every step of the way in their package for so-called human infrastructure.
Senator Tillis, as I let you go here this morning, I caught an op-ed just a couple of, days back concerning your support for a Democrat colleague of yours in the Senate from Arizona, her name Kristen Sinema, as you know, and, just applauding her way of not pushing back, but kind of standing on her own 2 feet, as it were, and speaking on behalf of the people she's elected to represent in Washington, D.C. When you see senators, as you have at times, buck the trend or your political party, some from the base may get ruffled, but others would see that it being, your independent mind, gathering information and making the decision that you feel it's best. Do we need more people like a Kristen Sinema in our U.S. Senate and in Washington as a whole to, push back against their party's efforts when they see it go awry?
Yeah, I'll give you a classic example. I mentioned it in my op-ed that about 4 years ago, I was being roundly criticized by my Republican friends because I would not nuke the filibuster. And I told them, you can't think in the moment. You can't let your frustrations actually create something that could be damaging long term. Now I think most of those folks who were not happy with me back then are kind of happy that I made them mad back then because we didn't nuke the filibuster and we're not destroying this country. Kristen Sinema is doing the same thing, and she's getting the same criticism for standing up to Chuck Schumer and respecting the institution. If we lose the filibuster, the PRO Act, just run down the list of things, federalizing elections, run down the list of things that they would do with a simple 51-vote majority. And they have that when the vice president's in the chair. So for somebody to have the courage to say, I can't, even if she supports some of those bills, she believes that the Democrats need to do the work to get 60 votes and maintain the integrity of the Senate institution. That is the only thing holding us, that is the thin line that's preventing a national defund the police, nationalizing elections, taking the power away from the states, a succession of things that would centralize power in Washington. And you got to compliment people for having the courage to do that and taking the heat in the near term.
Senator Tillis, you were down in our neck of the woods just a couple of weeks ago as you spoke at the Lower Cape Fear Republican Women's Club. I know you have a close friend in Representative Carolyn Justice from your time in the General Assembly and the work you've done together. And then on the personal side, just talk about coming to the area and how impressed you are with their organization's ability to turn people out the way they did at that luncheon a couple of weeks back.
The Lower Cape Fear Republican Women are one of the best organizations in the state. We've got a lot of good ones, but Carolyn Justice is a friend of mine. I served with her. She was a lion when she was in the legislature. I learned a lot from her. I loved serving with her. It was a great group. We had about 130 or so people there. I fielded questions for about 10 or 15 minutes, and I think that when you're able to get out there and explain what's going on in Washington and the real risk, the weak on China policy, the spending spree that the Democrats are going through, I think it unifies the group. And we all know that we've got to work hard. We've got an election coming up next year. We've got to work hard to make sure that we win back the House and win back the Senate and stop what I think is going to be a couple of really two steps down a slippery slope already with the $1.9 trillion package, with a retreat from global leadership. It's good to get out there and talk with great organizations like that, because those 130 people in that room have probably already talked to 1,000 more, and they'll talk to more, and that's how you win elections.
Senator Tillis with us here this morning. Senator, as always, thanks for your time, and look forward to a future conversation here with you.
Thank you, man. Take care.
That's U.S. Senator Thom Tillis with us here this morning as we received an update from both chambers of commerce through this half hour on the Big Talker FM. 15 or so minutes with Representative Murphy of North Carolina's 3rd Congressional District and U.S. Senator Thom Tillis with us now as we hit halftime on the 3-hour morning program. We head to the second half of today's show. After this timeout, Attorney Tom Goolsby going to join us, of course, in just a few minutes. Tom, graciously enough, bumped his slot to allow Senator Tillis to join us here for a few minutes to give us an update from his legislative chamber up in our nation's capital. Bottom of the hour news break. We'll get into some local headlines before Attorney Tom Goolsby joins us as we move closer to 9 o'clock here on the Big Talker FM.
Hi, this is Justin Humphreys from the Humphreys Law Firm on Eastwood Road. The Humphreys Law Firm is located in Lumina Station, Wilmington, North Carolina, practices civil litigation, intellectual property, commercial, and residential real estate. Please give us a call at 910-332-0721 or visit us on our website, which is www.humphreysfirm.law. You can also listen to me every Thursday from 6 to 7 p.m. on the Big Talker 106.7 FM.
Hello, I'm Jeff Rivenbark with WWAY News. The White House is moving to pressure state and local governments to swiftly adopt policies to protect renters after an eviction moratorium expired over the weekend. Millions of Americans could be pushed out of their homes. In a statement yesterday, the White House emphasized the federal government has provided $46.5 billion to keep renters where they are. It also accused states and cities of being too slow to act and getting that aid to those in need. President Joe Biden is drawing criticism even from his own party that he was slow to address the end of the moratorium. A big crowd gathered at the New Hanover County Board of Education building last night, with some advocating for and others against a mask mandate in schools. The New Hanover County Educational Justice Team held a press conference last night promoting the wearing of masks in schools throughout the county, but not everyone outside the district office last night agrees with that. The New Hanover County Board of Education is set to meet tonight to discuss the issue. In New Hanover County, the Health and Human Services Board is recommending COVID-19 vaccinations be mandatory for eligible New Hanover County employees. If passed by commissioners, it would mean employees would have a certain amount of time to get vaccinated or would have to mask, social distance, and test weekly for coronavirus. New Hanover County staff will meet today to discuss the details. The county should have a decision by the end of the week. And 1 year ago today, people were beginning final preparations as Hurricane Isaias quickly approached the Cape Fear. Isaias made landfall as a Category 1 hurricane in Ocean Isle Beach just after 11 p.m. Isaias had maximum sustained winds near 85 miles per hour and left millions of dollars in damage across the Cape Fear. For more on these stories, head over to WWAYTV3.com. I'm Jeff Rivenbark. Have a great day.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. I'm WWAY meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Storm Track 3 forecast. We'll grab the rain gear before heading out the door today. It's going to be a wet one, especially this afternoon. We're going to see mostly cloudy skies and multiple rounds of scattered showers over the course of the afternoon hours as well. Locally heavy at times. We do have flash flood watches that go into effect at noon, lasting through midnight, and our temperatures are going to be cooler than where they've been the past couple of days. We only top off in the low 80s and drop to the upper 60s, low 70s late tonight. Get your full forecast from WWAY and WWAYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by Two Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to twomenandatruck.com. twomenandatruck.com.
When your AC stops, don't despair. Just go.
Go where? The South Pole?
Go Southern Comfort Heating and Air. For preventive maintenance, service, and repair, go there.
Where?
Southern Comfort Heating and Air.
Are they fair?
Fair and square. Low prices, speedy service, and technicians who care. When your AC stops, don't stare. Go there.
Is there a website you can share?
Go SouthernComfort.com. If you go anywhere else, beware.
I swear.
Call 910-524-7609.
Hi, I'm Dr. Gabe Frank of the Frank Institute, and I wanted to tell you about our IV vitamin, infusion, and hydration therapies. These IVs are the most effective treatment for vitamin and nutrition deficiencies available, and with our wide range of offering, your treatment can be tailored to your specific needs. Whether you struggle with hydration or nutritional deficiency, injury recovery, low energy, please feel free to check out our IV infusions today. Schedule an appointment at 910-679-8534 or check out all our treatment services at www.frankinstitute.com.
910-299-7535 if you'd like to be a part of the show. Before we are joined by Thom Goolsby here in just a few minutes, local attorney and former state senator. We thank Senator Tillis and Congressman Murphy for joining us in the last half hour. Also, to note that we have also been in contact with Congressman Ted Budd's staff, one of the GOP candidates seeking the Republican nomination in the 2022 midterms and the U.S. Senate race. He, along with Pat McCrory, former governor, and former Congressman Mark Walker, are the three leading candidates thus far in the GOP primary, which is set for February of next year. We have spoken with Governor McCrory. Congressman Walker has joined the program on previous occasions, and Representative Ted Budd will be with us on Thursday of this week. Stay tuned for that conversation. You know, the fact that we see these politicians refuse to comply with their own proclamations, I think, tells you all you need to know when it comes to both the lawmakers and the different restrictions, orders, and laws that they approve. I mean, the latest, of course, through the laundry list of public officials who have, not lived up to rules for me, not for thee, or however you want to put it there. Lawmakers putting forth restrictions and not abiding by those different orders that have been put in place. The way we saw, what was it? The mayor of Washington, D.C. implements a mask mandate, particularly indoors in Washington just last week, and then caught over the weekend at a wedding with, you guessed it, no mask on while indoors. We saw it with the governor of California going out to some hoity-toity Napa Valley restaurant with even members of his administration that are involved in decisions related to your health through what we would consider the Department of Health and Human Service. High-ranking California health officials seated with their governor indoors, maskless, going about their business while your business has been shut down, or you are unable to go about your way of life in a way that you once knew. Yet for the elites, for those at the top, it's neither here nor there, as we see time and time again with many of our lawmakers. Well, many lawmakers, of course, pointing out that we need to, defund certain aspects of law enforcement and reallocate those monies to go here, there, and everywhere, all in the while paying big dollars at the tunes of tens of thousands of dollars each year for their own private security. You can't make it up, folks, and the hypocrisy we see at the highest levels of government, frankly, it's easy to see. Locally, a little later on tonight, the new Hanover County Board of Education will meet. They will make a decision and discuss the situation surrounding the upcoming academic year and policies related to mask requirements. Yesterday, two groups of concerned parents and stakeholders were out in front of the Board of Education meeting to vent their concerns or push their thoughts on the issue. A very highly contentious issue, of course, one that will be discussed later on, all virtually. And why will it be all virtual? Well, apparently one of the school board members had contracted COVID, vaccinated school board member who has been an outspoken advocate for masks and continues to push that, along with the hesitancy last year to get kids back into the classroom. She comes down with COVID, apparently exposed the rest of the board. They're all in quarantine now. And, we have to go all virtual. And as Josie Barnhart mentioned a little while ago when she called in, concerned parent, former educator with 3 kids, 2 of who are in the public schools. So listen, when you go to this all virtual, it makes it real difficult for people's concerns to be presented in a way that, may influence or will impact the viewpoints of those elected school board members. I do give a little credit to the fact that at least one school official in Nelson Bollier, you can say all you want about how he handled that meeting a couple of weeks back when the Looney Tune, repeat anarchist was in the building, and there was no any sort of security measures taken to handle that situation. You can criticize that, and rightfully so, but you give Nelson a lot of credit towards the end of last academic year. Well, not that he flip-flopped, but that he heard the concerns and the grievances from parents about getting the kids back in school. He saw what was happening through the all-virtual way of life, and he changed his mind when it came to getting kids back into the classroom. At first, he was very hesitant and wanted to keep it virtual. Well, his mind was changed over the course of a few months based on what he was seeing and how it was playing out. So give credit where credit is due. Josie and other concerned parents have started a petition, Parental Voice in Public Schools. Their petition is available at change.org. They're a couple of hundred away from reaching their goal, moving into tonight's school board meeting. As again, the meeting was canceled. Back in July, of course, it canceled without the call to the audience portion being able to be completed due to the disrespectful people that were out there who made it known through social media and elsewhere that they were going there for one sole purpose, and that was to, essentially blow the whole you-know-what up. And that was laid out there on social media, and nothing was done when he came out into the meeting and did exactly that. Well, parents say they deserve a voice in their children's academic growth, and as part of this petition, they say at this time, choice in masks should be made by individual families, not our governor or school board. Masks restrict breathing, make it hard to hear. Teachers and students are unable to see sound and word formation, as well as not being able to see facial emotion and responses. This is a hindrance to children, especially our young, highly impressionable kids. I would even say some teachers echo the same line of thought. You think, getting a bunch of elementary school kids at the tune of 20 to 30 of them all in line to pay attention to the subject you're trying to address, and then they can't hear you. Or you're unable to see their facial expressions to understand whether or not they're comprehending something, paying attention, or, out in la-la land. It goes both ways with that. They say cloth face masks are questionable when it comes to efficacy and in turn can be a high risk of self-contamination by the user. In addition, vaccines are widely available to kids 12 and older. They say parents should be responsible for vaccination and COVID tests. That should be the parent, not the school, deciding if their child needs one. Parents should be included in a phone call. In some other issues, unrelated to COVID. They say parents should be included in a phone call prior to their child being questioned by any law enforcement officer at school. They say parents have the right to demand unbiased teaching and subject material and request the school system's development in a system to ensure the staff is held accountable to that. They say it's especially important with the state social studies standards that have changed to require more inquiry-based learning lessons. Our district needs to develop age-appropriate topics of conversation, not just leave it up to teacher interpretation. They say parents have the right to know when students will be surveyed in the classroom and potentially allow their child to opt out of surveys if they wish to do so. And finally, they believe parents should be able to see all social-emotional learning content and lessons before teacher implementation and be allowed to opt out of this program implementation. Those are sort of the talking points as part of this petition that is being circulated around New Hanover County. You can find it under the headline, Parental Voice in Public Schools at change.org. We're 14 minutes in front of the hour. Our friend Thom Goolsby is going to join us after this quick break.
This show is also sponsored by Dr. Tony Maglione. Dr. Tony is a cardiologist practicing in Wilmington. He accepts Medicare patients, and his office is located across the street from New Hanover Regional Medical Center at 2032 17th Street. The office number is 202-1071. Dr. Tony is an author whose last book is Rules for Conservative Patriots, and it can be purchased on Amazon. His website is www.drtonymag.com.
Hey, this is Matt Ham, co-founder of Uprint Faith and Personal Development. Join us for Wake Up Our Faith, a real conversation about living out your faith between Sundays, streaming live every Wednesday at 11 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Catch the replay every Saturday and Sunday at 8 a.m. on Wilmington's Big Talker 106.7 FM. Stop by and visit us on the web at uprint.life.
Hey everyone, Ben Hawkins here with Cross Country Mortgage. Rates are still at historic lows, and there has never been a better time to purchase your dream home or refinance your existing. With over 300 loan products including conventional, FHA, VA, USDA, renovation, and jumbo, we are certain we have the right loan product for you and your family. Call me today to be pre-qualified to make the offer on your next dream home. 910-352-3373 or visit my website at lendwithben.com.
Hear Thom Goolsby on the Joe Catenacci Show.
People with common sense know that the entire theory of socialism is one big lie.
The Big Talker 106.7 FM.
Attorney Thom Goolsby with us, just a little behind schedule this morning. That's due in part to the fact that Thom agreed to jump on a few minutes after our normally scheduled time to make way for U.S. Senator Thom Tillis, who joined us just a little while ago. As a reminder, you can catch all of our conversations with the various guests, callers, and other partners that you hear day to day on our show through a podcast version of our program that's available on my website just after 10 a.m. each weekday at joecats.com. That's JOECATS.com. We thank Senator Tillis for joining us earlier in the program, along with Congressman Greg Murphy of North Carolina's 3rd Congressional District. U.S. Senate candidate Ted Budd going to join us a little later on this week, Thursday, I believe. Stay tuned for that discussion. Right now, Attorney Thom Goolsby with us. Thom, it's always a pleasure, my friend, and good morning to you, sir.
Same here, Joe, and I just appreciate the fact that you get all these people on, folks that you don't hear, you don't see on the big news stations, you don't read about what they're doing, and you actually speak directly to them, whether it's Phil Berger to know what's going on in the North Carolina Senate, or Tim Moore, or Thom Tillis. I mean, again, these are these are the people that can give you the truth. You don't have to sit there and have it filtered through some liberal journalism major on some news outlet. So it again just shows the value of talk radio. And of course, you don't have to get through the censors at YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, you name it. So it's beautiful.
One of the things that I did bring up to Congressman Murphy, who's also, a medical doctor, is something that you and I were sharing late last week when Pfizer came out and announced that, despite having no real review, that they are soon to be encouraging a third booster shot, all in the while announcing some $85 billion in revenues from the COVID vaccine thus far. And that may ruffle a few feathers in the fact that, many of these pharmaceutical companies are now paying out billions of dollars, in settlements to various groups of people for this, that, and the other, the opioid epidemic, the chemicals in baby powder, for instance. It's just amazing, as we have talked about, how many people are making a whole boatload of money off of this pandemic, while the decision makers are telling us to just wait it out and sit in a corner, wear a mask.
Well, Joe, actually, we didn't talk about that on the show last week. We were talking about the new CDC that they won't be using the rapid test PCR. I sent you those articles, which I thought was an interesting collection. I'm glad you had a chance to talk to Representative Murphy about it. But yeah, it was about how Pfizer, the same day that they said they have developed a third booster shot because of the effects of their vaccine reducing significantly over just a few months, they're now recommending that. I understand they're giving a booster in Israel now. But the interesting thing was, the same day they announced plans for the third shot, they also increased their guidance on earnings by like another, I don't remember how many billions of dollars, a percent, I think, increase in earnings, thanks to, well, in some part, if not large part, due to the fact that now they have another shot to sell. And then following that text, I sent you the one about Pfizer. Of course, this company that we're putting so much trust in settled with the Justice Department, paying the largest healthcare fraud fine in the history of the planet. So, again, just remember who it is you are dealing with and putting your faith and trust.
And again, that's not to create more hesitancy, as there's plenty of it out there. We're just laying out the facts as we see them, right? I mean, it's been a very confusing and sort of time where mixed messages have been kind of the soup du jour since the very onset of all of this. And yet, we're even still, I think, in many cases, no better off than we were, a little while ago, as far as getting some, clarification and some, clearance on, the approach that we should be taking here.
Absolutely. I mean, again, we need more information, not less. We need it's your body, your choice. We've heard that on the other side for many, many years. It's interesting that you don't hear them say that in this context so much. And everybody should be able to make their own choices. Plenty of folks have decided to get the vaccine. Hopefully the testing and all will come through soon and show that it's safe and going to be effective long term. I am concerned about folks like you, Joe, and I've not had anybody explain this, someone who's had COVID before, and what kind of autoimmune. I mean, if you already have the antibodies to COVID, I mean, we don't get a flu shot after we've had the flu. I'm just curious as to, what the long-term ramifications are for people like yourself who have natural immunity, and why. And are you actually, people like you, are you being encouraged to get a shot if you've already had the disease?
And you are hard pressed to find any of that sort of information or insight. I asked that question to Congressman Murphy just a little while ago, and he said, we've had history and science tell us over many centuries that when one comes in contact with certain viruses, diseases, that you build up a natural immunity. And what role does that play in all of this? And I think that's the biggest question a lot of folks have out there is why have we thrown away, centuries of science and, medical study because of, something new. And I think, at the very get-go of this, it was, all right, well, let's examine it, let's see it, and let's, figure out an approach forward. But we're not at the beginning of this. We're 18 months into all of this and still can't get a basic, answer to a simple question like that.
Well, and that's the first thing that, someone like the congressman who is a doctor should be able to tout. I mean, where is the CDC? Where's the FDA? Where they can tell us in minute detail that, I saw the Baltimore mayor yesterday who was, New Orleans mayor, because they've all started coming out with their mask mandates again. And of course, they're immediately found not wearing masks as one has come to expect in that regard. She was talking about all the children. All our children are dying. And of course, the news reporter that I heard reporting it said, yes, in the entire time during COVID, we've had 9 children die. And then he started going through the numbers of children that have died in street violence, which of course she has nothing to say about and no concerns as we continue to look at all those kinds of numbers. I mean, things like Joe in Chicago, as Lori Lightfoot is running around masked or maskless and putting in new mandates. There have been 105 murders. There have been 35 COVID-related deaths in just that month, the month of July. When we look at places like New Orleans, D.C., 21 murders, 8 COVID deaths. So again, where are we putting our emphasis and why? Why are we not looking to protect people? When we talk about Black Lives Matter, why is Black Lives Matter not protesting in Chicago trying to protect all the Black lives that are snuffed out every single week? I mean, again, if you're going to sit in your home, you're going to allow these news channels to play their propaganda through your house, through your household, and into your brain. You need to at least ask some questions and be just a little bit analytical instead of just being a dumb sponge sitting on the couch believing all of this and letting your life be ruined. I mean, that's what disturbs me so much is so many people are sitting at home frightened out of their minds about things that aren't going to hurt them, that have, do you walk outside and are you frightened about getting struck by lightning every time you step out onto your porch? No. And again, when you start looking at the likelihood of any of these things, you realize how low it is, but none of these mavens in the press tell you that. They are nothing but panic mongers, and they should be public enemy number one. Think about all the suicides, all the drug use, all the alcohol abuse. I deal with it every day in my criminal practice. I see all the people that are so affected and traumatized by life in general, but particularly life of today with all these stresses that are being put on people. Joe, I question, these things on a daily basis and look at them and analyze them. And as we talked about last week, when we find out the CDC puts out a memo on the 21st of July that apparently and after I did the show last week, multiple calls, multiple people asking me to forward them. I know you posted it, the CDC memo that they posted. How does that go unreported? That we now find out that the flu season that disappeared last year didn't disappear because of the rapid test PCR. It was giving false positives for COVID when you had the flu. The flu didn't go away. They reported the flu as COVID, and now the CDC is withdrawing emergency use authorization to the FDA to be able to use that false test. And nobody reports that. Nobody calms people down. Nobody helps. It's amazing to me, my friend.
Attorney Thom Goolsby with us here this morning. Tom, to move away from COVID for just a moment, in somewhat related news, we've got the Made for TV event going on the steps of Congress in Capitol Hill right now, in lawmakers who are protesting the elimination of this moratorium, lifting the moratorium on rent on the rent that has been on the eviction moratorium that's been in place for the last several months. This eviction moratorium that allows renters to basically stay in their residences rent-free over the last year because of COVID, placing this financial burden on landlords and all other sorts of things as the costs of those landlords continues to go up for one reason or the other. The renters. Well, we've got 9 or so million jobs out there when it comes to openings, and the renters still collecting unemployment and then not using that unemployment money to pay their rent. And this made-for-TV sort of way of showcasing the outrage our lawmakers have for lifting this eviction moratorium. I mean, isn't this sort of like the most socialist action our government has taken in decades when it comes to effectively transferring control of private property from the lawful owner to the renter?
Yes, and it will continue if the left has anything to do with it at all. It's part of the agenda. It's exactly what AOC has talked about since she first got elected. Actually, before she got elected, now into her second term, and of course that is the plan, is to slowly but surely strangle the businesses out of business, and again continue to use panic, continue to use, like Rahm Emanuel told us, you don't ever allow a crisis to go to waste. Grab everything you can grab and keep it going. I mean, Joe, when we see Israel's already started the third vaccine, that Pfizer's ready to roll it out, as you and I were talking about earlier, and they will keep this going as long as the American people. And again, don't be confused by the numbers that more people many, many times over have died in our big cities from murder than from COVID. Oh, don't pay attention to those numbers. Don't look at the man behind the screen. Let us continue to panic you. You're more likely, how many times over in a place like Chicago, to be murdered in the street as a black person, or as anybody, but particularly as an African American, as you are dying from COVID. Again, Joe, those numbers, 105 murders to 35 COVID deaths. Why are they talking about COVID? But again, because it's not convenient to talk about all the black people that are murdered constantly in Chicago. When I go there to visit my brother, I always, and we talked about this on the show in the past, I always follow how many people die when I'm there, and you never hear anything about it. The hospitals around the South Side are war zones. I mean, they're like somewhere in the middle of the Afghan war. If you went to a MASH unit and you saw them rushing people in, coding people out, trying to put people back together after they've been shot up. That's Chicago. But that's okay, man. That's okay. We're worried about COVID now. We're not worried about the 105 people that are murdered. We're worried about the 35 that most likely, as you and I talked, Joe, have 2.6 comorbidities, 80-plus years old, and died with COVID, not from COVID, because they never give you that breakdown either. These are dead people, but let's put everything into some type of reasonable understanding.
Attorney Thom Goolsby with us, former state senator. Tom, when we look at some other news going on here in the state of North Carolina, given the amount of money that the state's receiving from the quote-unquote COVID relief, legislative, bills that have gone through in Washington, D.C., we've had monies that have been allocated towards, many different things here within our state budget. although it's remained at the same levels over the last couple of years due to the budget stalemate with the General Assembly and the governor. The North Carolina Education Lottery announces Monday that they raised nearly $1 billion for educational programs in the state through the fiscal year of 2021. $936 million to be exact, which was raised, a new record, by the way. I'm trying to figure out, how and when we talk about $1 billion through the education lottery, hundreds of millions, if not billions, through COVID relief. How and why are we still needing more money when it comes to investment into our public education system when you see numbers like this coming up?
Well, Joe, the answer is easy, my friend. It's because the government runs it. Government always needs more money. They're never accountable. They don't have shareholders to answer to. We're clearly not shareholders. We're the people at the end. We're the ones holding the empty pail. I mean, and that's what you get with government. You get a Leviathan that is always hungry, that always wants to grow, that always wants to eat. And it does not matter how much you pump into the system if the system's corrupt. And I do believe the system's corrupt. I've said I believe it's corrupt from the beginning. It does not focus on the children. You don't hear us, you hear very rarely anyone talking about the children and about the results we get for our money. They don't want to talk about the results we get for our money. They don't want to talk about the dismal performance rates. I'm sure, Joe, with other folks, with the school board members and the secretary or the superintendent of public education, all those folks can give you the dismal statistics that we have coming in thanks to COVID. All the money we continue to pour into education. What we ought to do is start basing the money that we do give to all of these people on some kind of performance metrics. All they tell us is, keep giving us more money, we'll work harder and give you better results. And then nobody ever measures it, ever. That is why I believe, and I've heard this from Deanna Ballard, I'm sure Michael Lee is probably on board with it, but we need to start working toward taking the money and having it follow the child and letting the parents make up their mind who they want teaching their children, and let's spend the money that way. Let's get away from this government-run education model. Let's give the money to the students and let them take it where they can best be educated. Because if that's what we care about, if we care about the children and not the system, then let's let the money follow the children. But in the end, Joe, they don't care about the kids. It's about us. It's about the money. It's about the system. It's never about the education of the children. When you look at the bottom line and you ask the hard questions, they will tell you every time, give it to us. We know better than the parents. We're not worried about the kids. That's the bottom line.
Attorney Thom Goolsby with us here this morning. And Tom, when we talk about big dollars, before we let you go, NBC reporting yesterday that U.S. companies spent $8 billion last year on diversity and inclusion programs. $8 billion was spent by U.S. companies last year on promoting diversity and inclusion, I guess, within their businesses and through various ad campaigns, as you see it everywhere and anywhere you look. I mean, no wonder why many of these people continue to claim that the work is never done when you see that much money pouring into this way of thinking.
Well, Joe, of course, Joe, the work will never be done. If the work were done, we wouldn't need your money anymore, and we wouldn't need our jobs. We can, when you subsidize something, you get more of it. When you tax something, you get less of it. When you measure something, you know what you're getting for the money you're spending. But you notice in all of this, Joe, that we're subsidizing more problems. You're hiring people to locate and find them and keep them perpetual. And of course, they're going to be that way. And in education, if you don't measure the results and you just keep dumping money in the pot, all you're going to do is keep getting a call for more money. All it takes is a little common sense, and I'm afraid, my friend, common sense is in short supply.
And with that said, lastly, there's still a lot of noise being made surrounding the decision by Nicole Hannah-Jones, the Pulitzer Prize-winning 1619 Project, quote-unquote investigative journalist who turned down that lucrative deal with UNC Chapel Hill. As someone who has an eye on higher education, is there anything wrong with alumni and others within a university, particularly those who fund certain portions of these universities, to question a hiree or a potential employee if you're going to be offering hundreds of thousands of dollars and lifelong tenure to this person? Anything wrong with concerned alumni presenting questions on the person that has an opportunity to become very wealthy and influential on your campus by accepting the package that was offered to her?
Oh, absolutely, Joe. If there, if political correctness is going to be used as our measure of things, how dare anyone who might give money to the university and want to ask questions about how it's going? How dare any taxpayer question anything any bureaucrat does at the university level? It's outrageous, Joe. Who do they think they are? They think they're paying the bills? They think they have a voice? Shut up. Go back in line and pay your taxes.
It's pretty amazing, how this is still a story. Alumni question, the hiring of, controversial figures that, completely makes up, a project that we're now introducing into our schools, despite the corrections and the, massive, recalls that have had to follow the initial sort of essays, I guess, as it were, that were put together through this 1619 project. It's amazing. Filled with and riddled with inaccuracies, but you question any of the inaccuracies, all of a sudden, the card that they love to play. You're probably a racist, a bigot, and, who knows, probably a sexist as well.
Well, Joe, that's clear. We know that. we know that. Just write your check, shut the hell up.
Thom, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks again for adjusting your time and schedule for us this morning.
My pleasure, my friend. Have a good day.
That's attorney Thom Goolsby with us every Tuesday morning here on the Big Talker FM, local attorney, former state senator, member of the UNC Board of Governors. Great to have him as a friend and a contributor to our program each week here on the Big Talker FM.
Keeping Leland informed. The Big Talker 106.7 FM WFBT, Carolina Beach.
I'm K.O. Davis from K.O.'s Coast to Coast Tree, and I want to be your tree man.
When your trees need cut, 2 letters to know. One is a K, the other is an O. K.O.
Tree man. Proper trimming is the most important thing that you can do, so don't just hire anybody to do it. You need someone that knows what they're doing.
K.O.
Call the professionals at K.O.'s Coast to Coast Tree and visit KOTrees.com.
I'm State Farm Agent Rob Renz, and I want to help you get to a better state. We are one of the fastest growing and most reviewed insurance agencies in Wilmington. That's because our customers love the personalized attention that we give to you. Let us help you get to a better state by visiting our website at ilminsurance.com. That's ilminsurance.com. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
If you're anywhere near Oak Island, come check out Seaside Jewelers at 8801 East Oak Island Drive. They're on Oak Island. You're going to find the latest in Oak Island lighthouses, nautical charms, pendants. You're going to find bracelet, turtle charms, anything in the jewelry genre you need, you can get there. And if they don't have it, they'll find a way to get it for you. Come check out Seaside Jewelers at 8801 East Oak Island Drive. And if you tell them you heard it on the Big Talker FM, an extra 10% off your purchase, but only at Seaside Jewelers, 8801 East Oak Island Drive. The lowest prices in town. Come check us out today.
Hey, this is Matt Ham, co-founder of Uprint and the co-host of Wake Up Our Faith, every Saturday and Sunday right here in Wilmington's Big Talker. We invite you to join with our nonprofit movement by participating in the Portable Faith Community. This is a $10 a month tax-deductible contribution, and you get access to daily encouragement, resources, as well as our prayer community. You can go to wakeupmyfaith.com to get subscribed and learn more. That's wakeupmyfaith.com.
Hey, I'm Yael Osowski.
And I'm David Clement.
We're the host of Consumer Choice Radio, broadcasting every Saturday at 10 a.m. here on the Big Talker 106.7 FM.
Consumer Choice Radio is a weekly conversation featuring the latest news, interviews, and expert analysis that covers consumer topics from around the world.
ConsumerChoiceRadio.com.
Hi, this is Justin Humphreys from the Humphreys Law Firm on Eastwood Road. The Humphreys Law Firm is located in Lumina Station, Wilmington, North Carolina, practices civil litigation, intellectual property, commercial, and residential real estate. Please give us a call at 910-332-0721 or visit us on our website, which is www.humphreysfirm.law. You can also listen to me every Thursday from 6 to 7 p.m. on the Big Talker 106.7 FM.
All right, 16 minutes past the hour here on the Big Talker FM, moving through the final couple of segments. As we get back into the swing of things, just want to give a big tip of the cap again to my good buddy Chad Adams and TK Turbo for filling in for me yesterday. My two first cousins, brothers, one from Manhattan, the other from the Tampa area, had been in the region over the course of the last few days and had a great time. It was my dad's sister, my aunt, her two boys. And, well, as you can probably expect, my first cousin from Manhattan, maybe a little different perspective on the political news in the day than the way you and I see things. Those conversations were very limited, though, as we got in the discussion surrounding taxes and free stuff, particularly when we look around the rest of the world and look up into the Scandinavian countries, the Nordic countries, the way of life in Europe. We were able to come to an agreement on a few different things, and then as it started to heat up, that's when we broke bread, had a couple of sips of wine, and changed the conversation. And we still love each other. We still had a great time with one another. He's headed back home now, and Chad filling in yesterday. I mean, the few minutes that I caught of his program, he was all giddy yesterday. I can't sleep. But the night before, I host Joe's show. That's because of all of the great people who listen, of course, and the supporters who partner with us. But in addition to that, I can echo some of those sentiments in that we have a very unique opportunity and an opportunity that is few and far between when it comes to just sheer numbers, like the number of people who get to do this on a day-to-day basis, very limited when it comes to, job opportunities out there. And having been able to do this in some way, shape, or form, or through one responsibility or another in broadcasting for the better part of, now almost 20 years, it's something that, I cherish. And when we talk about that giddy feeling, that like night before you go on vacation, you can't sleep because you're so excited to get the car packed up and hit the road or get to the airport. Well, that's the sort of feeling that I get every single day at 4:30 in the morning as I wake up and get to come here and do what we do. There are one of two people in this entire region of, almost 700,000 that do what I do every day. And when you look at it that way, it's an honor, a privilege, and we take it extremely seriously, but with a little tongue-in-cheek mixed in with the personality that God gave me, frankly, in my ability to try and entertain and inform on a day-to-day basis for a 3-hour period. But, I can echo some of the things that Chad was saying about the excitement that you've got going for you each and every morning when you get to come here and do what we do. No matter what you've got going on kind of personally, whether you're tired, hungover. Did I say hungover? I meant something else. Whatever it may be. That when you get in this chair and you get into the office, you get that excitement that starts running through you, the adrenaline, and then to be equipped with the information, to be able to follow the news, whether it be the local level, with what we've got going on here with crime, when it comes to the schools and the contentious conversations that have been ongoing, particularly here in New Hanover, related to different theories and ideas that are being introduced into public education. Now with this mask debate that will be held later on today. In fact, Cape Fear Community College just released a news item a moment ago that, indoors, moving into the new semester, Cape Fear Community College will require all students, faculty, staff, vendors, contractors, and visitors to wear masks indoors, regardless of vaccination status. And there's another question that pops up in my mind that, we were 14 days to flatten the curve, and then it was we need to limit the number of cases of COVID. We need to prevent hospitals from being overrun and try to do the best we can when it comes to fatalities in our country. So we need to shut down for a couple of months. And now it's turned into, we need to limit the cases and we need to eradicate. It seems as if that's kind of the train of thought right now. We need to eradicate, a virus, a viral infection. Good luck with that. We've got some other things going on here locally as it relates to crime, of course. Another day and no further details as far as what went into the double homicide over on Middle Sound Loop a couple of weekends back. They held a news conference with no news last week, pleading for an end to the violence, and then the next day, two people, randoms, apparently get shot up in a drive-by. Well, somehow, some way, the names of those victims, including the one who is injured and looks like it will survive, the names of those victims released, yet we still don't know who the third victim was as part of that double homicide in Middle Sound. Why? Well, maybe why not? Some would say, what do we need her information for? Well, to provide a little bit more clarity on what had happened. Thankfully, we didn't see that violence spill into the weekend past. That doesn't mean, it's over. I did read a good excerpt that Ashley Kozakowski over at WECT put on her social media as far as an email that their news outlet received last week, putting together a lot of relevant questions that we'll likely never get an answer to as far as the business that employs validated gang members and now have pretty much remained silent through all of this. Still not yet has sold one can of beer, despite receiving good chunk of change and media attention for their quote-unquote efforts. Talk about a chunk of change, and many of the schools always calling for more resources. Well, here we are. Public school districts here in North Carolina have received about $5.3 billion in COVID-related relief money from the federal government. But on average, school leaders have spent just 13% of that money. So no discussions, of course, on how that money will be used into the future, when it will be spent, where it will go, whether or not there will be any sort of strings attached or accountability to those federal monies. But $5.3 billion in COVID-related relief money from the federal government has been sent to public school districts in North Carolina, and on average, school officials have spent just 13% of that money. And then here we are. We can already foresee it in the next few weeks as the budget discussion continues to heat up at our North Carolina General Assembly. All you'll hear from folks like the king of tyranny, King Cooper, is that we're not funding our public schools enough. This is why I will not support, the budget put forth by Republicans that includes teacher raises, massive investment in infrastructure, and setting up North Carolina on a course of the next decade where billions will be spent, on true infrastructure. And then we've got more of that coming up from Washington, D.C. You heard Senator Tillis kind of explain why he supported this procedural vote in all of this, and how Republicans will be pushing back on some of the other goodies that Democrats will want included in this bill that will ultimately total over $1 trillion, and we'll see whether or not that gets pushed forward. So there's a lot of talk over the course of the last week on the Tokyo Olympics and the one gymnast, multiple gold medal winner, her name's Simone Biles. In fact, at the beginning of the Tokyo Olympics, we highlighted a story that was published at USA Today on one of the greatest of all time when it comes to U.S. gymnastics and her personal glory, and how she has lived really the American dream, and not without consequence, in that she grew up to a family and a mother in particular dependent on drugs and alcohol. She and her two siblings separated at times as they went through the foster system, and how she was able to overcome all of that and more, and we'll get to that in a moment, how she was able to live through all of that to become one of the most successful gymnasts in our country and that the world has ever seen. And then she got a lot of criticism a week or so ago when she pulled out of the competition because of the fact that, frankly, she had a mental breakdown. How could somebody do that to their country? And how could this athlete who's got everything on, the tips of her finger could do that to her team, her country? And, some were basically calling her a quitter and this, that, and the other. Well, those takes were obviously expected. The life that this young woman has lived over the course of just over 2 decades, pretty amazing, particularly when it comes to what she went through in her training as a U.S. gymnast. The U.S. grew from a non-entity in the world of gymnastics, in that game and realm, to one of the greatest ever known, in large part because of U.S. gymnastics embracing in, essentially Soviet Union caliber training. If you look back into the history of gymnastics and, Olympics and world competition, go look at how the Soviets used to train back in the day, particularly in Soviet Russia. Gymnasts were bullied, starved, had no real external supervision, and were basically at the behest of their trainers. And that environment was basically adapted by the U.S. and U.S. gymnastics years ago, which led to the rise of a guy by the name of Larry Nassar. He flourished by using the same tactics that Soviet Russia used many years ago, by gaining the trust of his athletes, offering food, comfort, and in doing so, took complete advantage of a situation, frankly, with minors. And the scandal of Larry Nassar only blew up because of the bravery of people like Simone Biles. These kids came forward, kids, frankly, some, including her, from backgrounds that, well, as we highlighted, were checkered. Comes from a family where there were no parents, bounced here, there, and everywhere through foster care, separated from her siblings, only finally to be reunited as she grew a little older. So having to go through all that as a child and then getting physically and mentally abused by her coach years later. She is one of the few people that spoke out against this predator and forced the U.S. Olympic Committee to tear U.S. gymnastics apart from the core. And then we can get into, of course, Simone Biles and the fact that, as a 24-year-old in gymnastics, has pushed the limit as far as being at the top of the world. In fact, when we look at the history of the Olympics, only 3 gymnasts in history have won the women's all-around competition at the age or older than 24. But you can argue that, this young woman felt that she had political pressure, societal pressure to go perform during the Olympic Games, even after pushing for reform within the organization she represents. And ultimately, as she dealt with some injuries, the fact that, well, her age came into play here at the end of her historic career. That some would say the way she's expressed herself over the course of the last few weeks has been what leaders do, given the history that she has lived through and her life experiences. So some of the hot takes that have come out since then, I just could not really jump on board with because I felt they were, well, one, going off a path that I just didn't see as far as being a quitter and someone who let people down. I see someone that completely lost it as far as mentally breaking down, and ultimately with all of the weight on her shoulders over the course of the last several years, particularly within the internals of what is known as USA Gymnastics, that she, in fact, should be getting the support of the millions of Americans who have been following her career. But when you're on social media and you have a keyboard and no real accountability, and sometimes when it comes to transparency as to who you are and what you're saying, it's par for the course to see all the crap, frankly, that people put out on social media day to day. Our call-in number is 910-299-7535. If you'd like to be a part of the show, the last half hour of our program today is yours. We'll be back.
In constant sorrow through his day, I am the man of constant sorrow. I've seen trouble all my day.
Hello, I'm Jeff Rivenbark with WWAY News. The White House is moving to pressure state and local governments to swiftly adopt policies to protect renters after an eviction moratorium expired over the weekend. Millions of Americans could be pushed out of their homes. In a statement yesterday, the White House emphasized the federal government has provided $46.5 billion to keep renters where they are. It also accused states and cities of being too slow to act and getting that aid to those in need. President Joe Biden is drawing criticism even from his own party that he was slow to address the end of the moratorium. A big crowd gathered at the New Hanover County Board of Education building last night, with some advocating for and others against a mask mandate in schools. The New Hanover County Educational Justice Team held a press conference last night promoting the wearing of masks in schools throughout the county, but not everyone outside the district office last night agrees with that. The New Hanover County Board of Education is set to meet tonight to discuss the issue. In New Hanover County, the Health and Human Services Board is recommending COVID-19 vaccinations be mandatory for eligible New Hanover County employees. If passed by commissioners, it would mean employees would have a certain amount of time to get vaccinated or would have to mask, social distance, and test weekly for coronavirus. New Hanover County staff will meet today to discuss the details. The county should have a decision by the end of the week. And 1 year ago today, people were beginning final preparations as Hurricane Isaias quickly approached the Cape Fear. Isaias made landfall as a Category 1 hurricane in Ocean Isle Beach just after 11 p.m. Isaias had maximum sustained winds near 85 miles per hour and left millions of dollars in damage across the Cape Fear. For more on these stories, head over to WWAYTV3.com. I'm Jeff Rivenbark. Have a great day.
Hi, this is Justin Humphreys from the Humphreys Law Firm on Eastwood Road. The Humphreys Law Firm is located in Lumina Station, Wilmington, North Carolina, practices civil litigation, intellectual property, commercial, and residential real estate. Please give us a call at 910-332-0721 or visit us on our website, which is www.humphreysfirm.law. You can also listen to me every Thursday from 6 to 7 p.m. on the Big Talker 106.7 FM.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. I'm WWAY meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Storm Track 3 forecast. We'll grab the rain gear before heading out the door today. It's going to be a wet one, especially this afternoon. We're going to see mostly cloudy skies and multiple rounds of scattered showers over the course of the afternoon hours as well. Locally heavy at times. We do have flash flood watches that go into effect at noon, lasting through midnight, and our temperatures are going to be cooler than where they've been the past couple of days. We only top off in the low 80s and drop to the upper 60s, low 70s late tonight. Get your full forecast from WWAY and WWAYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by Two Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to twomenandatruck.com. twomenandatruck.com.
All right, 23 minutes in front of the hour as we head up towards 10 o'clock. Tomorrow, State Treasurer Dale Falwell going to join us. Also, Mike Kucharski's the owner and CEO of one of the largest refrigerated trucking companies in the country. And we'll be talking about supply chain, the rise in gas prices, and how ultimately, along with a shortage of truckers through his company and many others like it around the nation, that, in fact, because of these things, you're paying more for pretty much everything. And that's not going to go away anytime soon. Portions of our program presented to you by our friends at Southern Comfort Heating and Air. In fact, yesterday, over at my brother-in-law and sister's house, entertaining the cousins and sipping on a couple of Coronas, and what do you know, the AC shuts down. Bad thermostat. In the upper, in the attic, bad thermostat on the wall, and it was hot. We had some ice-cold beverages to cool us down, but that only lasted so long before we had to call the heating and air guy. Well, I point you to Southern Comfort Heating and Air, family-owned, operated, independently operated company here in our area. When your HVAC system breaks down, you need a prompt and professional technician to assess the issue and offer the most cost-effective solution. Call my guy Bruce at Southern Comfort Heating and Air with all your heating and AC repair needs. Talk about preventative maintenance in the times of year when the AC is not being tested the way it is right now. Though today, a bit more comfortable as to what we've seen weather-wise over the last week or so. On the spot, 24/7 emergency service at affordable prices. Call Southern Comfort Heating and Air at 910-524-7609. That's 910-524-7609. Find them online at GoSouthernComfort.com. That's GoSouthernComfort.com. Tonight, the Board of Education will meet here in New Hanover County. The mask issue will be up for debate, and ultimately, it looks like a decision will be made. Cape Fear Community College announces earlier today that no matter what your vaccination status is, you're going to be required to wear a mask indoors on their campus. We hear that Senator Lindsey Graham has also tested positive for COVID. In efforts to promote vaccinations, he says that he's glad he got the vaccine because he thinks that his mild symptoms would be much worse. And the messaging in all of this is something that we've pointed out at length over the course of the last several months, years. But here, just with the vaccines. At the beginning, it was get the vaccine so you don't get COVID. Months later, get the vaccine because you can still get it, but it won't be as bad. And they will tell you, well, it's just the science and the evolution of us getting a better understanding of what's playing out. You wonder why people are hesitant because of the confusion that is in the minds of many millions of people all across the country based on the mixed messaging we've been receiving since the very onset of this BS COVID-19 Chinese Communist virus pandemic. Apparently, they're forcing tests and shutdowns now back in Wuhan because of a rise there. So will this ever go away? Or will it start to fade, as our friend Thom Goolsby made mention, when the American people say, enough is enough, let's continue to move forward. We're going to understand that there's a level of natural immunity, there's a level of vaccination that puts us in a place where we're able to move and live comfortably. I don't know about you, and I know there are people that are still being extremely hesitant, and to an extent, I'm not gathering around massive crowds or doing this, that, or the other. Granted, you're not going to find me, in the middle of 7,000 people while it's 98 degrees outside, at a concert venue in the middle of summer here. That's just, my choice, and really has nothing to do with COVID. It has more or less to do with not wanting to sit outside in 95-degree heat for a couple of hours to listen to a musical act. Oh, by the way, it was announced by the White House yesterday that President Joe Biden will not be attending Barack Obama's star-studded 700-person birthday party this weekend up on Martha's Vineyard. I don't know if you've ever seen his mansion on Martha's Vineyard, but if anything and everything he had been saying during his term in office, and now that we're all hearing, of course, of those magic words known as climate change, not sure why you'd be buying and purchasing a multiple $1 million resort house on Martha's Vineyard if the seas were rising. Or are they not? Or are they not going to do so in your lifetime so your investment will be paid for? I'm not really sure. It's just a mixed messaging. If, the masks work, then why are many politicians not wearing masks indoors at private events? Hours after implementing mandates on their constituency and the people that they supposedly, quote-unquote, serve. Some of the stuff just doesn't add up when you lay these sorts of things next to one another. Dang, a 700-person birthday party. Well, it's going to be outdoors, so we're all good. Never been to Martha's Vineyard. I've been to Cape Cod a couple of times, and I hear Nantucket is beautiful if you like rich people and, gallivanting in the streets, completely inebriated with, the housewives out there strutting their stuff, on a random Tuesday afternoon when they're having martinis, and who the hell knows what that leads into, but maybe that's another story for another time. Maybe we should go on location to Nantucket and see, what Kevin Spacey is up to these days. 910-299-7535 is our number. Caller, you're with us. Good morning.
Good morning. I have some update for you.
Okay.
Well, on top of everything else, we have, I have to turn my radio down, I think. Oh, okay. You know, there's word changes happening so fast overnight, and one of them is pseudo. Now, I'm in shock over this, okay? You know what pseudo means, pretend.
Mm-hmm.
And we have enough pseudo in our society, okay? And there's a new one that popped up, SUDO, pseudo. And that means that it's a substitute for using, well, it's you're using someone else's security privileges. SUDO. Now, that's quite a word change, wouldn't you say?
Certainly.
Yeah. And I have to say, what a great show you have today. Oh, my gosh. Listen, I agree with everything Tom Goolsby says. And I used to be on the radio with him, with JJ on Wave Radio, like 22 years ago.
Okay.
And yeah, we were like a team, and everybody was, for progression in our community. And I can't believe we're in the same exact spot where we were 22 years ago. Fighting. Fighting for it, and like he says, we're the taxpayers. Okay, we pay for all that's going on. And let me tell you, there's what really impresses me is the employees in certain places, like say the hospital. Okay, now we merged with Novant, and there's different doctors from all around the country that are on videos, and little video. They bring it into your room. You're talking to a doctor from California. Okay, and they have their own medicines. Okay, but I will say this: I was in there recently, and they had each other's backs. If there's anything that might be going negative for a patient, they are there for us. That's a real compliment. Okay, and of course the pseudo courthouse we have is carte blanche to me. I mean, I work on that. I work on reporting it to the state, and then the state actually tells me to go over to Washington D.C., the federal level, and tell them about it. I said, oh my gosh, do I have to do everything? So that's where I'm at, but I'm having fun today.
Well, thank you for the call, ma'am, and you buzz us anytime you would like, and we enjoy your commentary. When you do phone in at 910-299-7535, we'll hit a timeout, and we'll wrap up our program, a Tuesday edition of the show. Again, you want to, or you may have missed Senator Thom Tillis earlier today, Congressman Greg Murphy of North Carolina's 3rd Congressional District. Just after 10 o'clock, our podcast will be updated at joecats.com, and you can listen back to some of the things they had to say earlier in the program, along with all of the other guests that we've had earlier this morning. Josie Barnhart, concerned mom and former educator, mom of 3. 2 of her kids are in the New Hanover County Public Schools. She laid out her thoughts and pointed our attention to this petition that has been going around New Hanover County, calling out a few things that they would like to see discussed at the New Hanover County Board of Education meeting a little later on today. Again, if you'd like to listen back to that, you could do so through our Facebook page, of course, where we have the video portion of our program available, along with my website at joecats.com. That's joecats.com. At change.org, petition has been circulating, parental voice in public schools, and they listed a number of different things that they feel should be brought to the attention of the New Hanover County Board of Education ahead of their meeting tonight, all virtual, as one school board member, vaccinated school board member, got COVID, apparently got around the board, exposed them to the virus, and now they're all in quarantine, so they go back to all virtual. How convenient, given that the last school board meeting was also held virtually because of the inability of our elected officials to get hold of a situation that turned a little chaotic because of a few bad apples. And when we talk about bad apples, really just one anarchist who made statements publicly on social media that he was going to do exactly what he did, and his mission was accomplished. 11 minutes in front of the hour. We wrap up the program after this timeout here on the Big Talker FM.
You woke up this morning, got yourself a gun. Your mama always said you'd be the chosen one. But you see, one in a million, you got the blue moon in your eyes. So sing it now. Woke up this morning, you got a blue moon in your eyes.
I am State Farm Agent Rob Renz, and I want to help you get to a better place. Visit us online at ilminsurance.com. That's ilminsurance.com. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Hey everyone, Ben Hawkins here, your host of the Lynn with Ben Show, live on 106.7 FM, the Big Talker Radio, every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. We talk all things mortgage and real estate related, and we'd love to have you join us this Saturday, 9 a.m.
This is Radio Free Dixie, and I'm Mark Allen. We often hear people complain about fake news, but fake history is just as bad. The impression that many people have about the Old South is the result of fake history. For example, have you ever wondered why it was okay for 13 American colonies to secede from England, but wrong for 13 Confederate states to secede from the United States? The truth is that both groups had a God-given right to secede and plenty of good reasons for it. If your ancestors fought for Dixie, hold your head high and defend truth and honor. That's what real men do. Join the Confederate Legion, sponsored by the Sons of Confederate Veterans. Go to MakeDixieGreatAgain.com. That's MakeDixieGreatAgain.com.
This is Mark Markley of Recovering Hope. Don't miss this Wednesday from 6 to 7 as I speak with Derek Maltz. Derek was the special agent in charge of the United States Department of Justice, Drug Enforcement Administration's Special Operations Division. He knows what's happening at our borders, in Washington, and what needs to happen to combat this drug pandemic. Tune in this Wednesday from 6 to 7 p.m. right here on the only Big Talker.
Is your dog or cat a picky eater or suffer with skin and food allergies or excessive shedding? Did you know dry food was the #1 cause of these health problems?
My name is Victor from Durham, North Carolina. I have a 3-year-old male Cane Corso, and I've been feeding him raw diet for 3 years. I switched over to the ready-made, prepackaged raw diet. He is fit and trim. He still runs around and moves like a puppy.
Let's get your pet naturally healthy, naturally happy today. Visit heavensenthealthypet.com.
Of you. Oh, what hijacked my world at night to a place in the past we've been cast out of. Oh, now we're back in the fight.
Right, as we head up to the top of the hour, I had an old college coach who has engaged in the political banter over the last year or so. I've seen him getting more and more engaged, but he sent out a post last night, encouraging his followers and friends to turn off the news, and that your life will instantly become less stressful. If you can go to the beach, listen to live music with great friends, go enjoy your summer, he says. And I agree in part with that. There is a fine balance that we all need to have, and I think social media and scrolling through your news feed constantly doesn't necessarily help. And that there are many other things that you can be doing out to enjoy your life than listening to strangers or high school classmates that you haven't seen in 35 years, and engage in circular conversation about things that, well, none of us are eventually going to agree on behind a computer screen. So I understand the sentiment. I just feel that might be the wrong approach, in that I'd say let's not turn the news off completely. There are so many different platforms and sources of information that you can use today without, the narrative or some of the mainstream sentiment and how they want to drive the conversation, and a wedge between me and you, depending on where you stand on the issues of the day. I'd say let's not turn it off completely, particularly if you're tuned into the most listened to, entertaining, and informative talk program here in Eastern North Carolina. But we pay a lot of money into these systems, whether it be education, whether it be the taxpayer dollars that are invested in this, that, and the other, and then end up not getting put into this, that, and the other. You could make the argument that ignorance and unwillingness to pay attention or involved is how we got here in the first place. And given the investment we make through our hard-earned money and income and work and sacrifice to strive for that work-life balance so we can provide for our family and help out and lend a hand to our friends, I'd say let's not turn it off. We invest our lives into the community we live in, to bettering our family and the people around us. That being informed and involved, that doesn't mean you need to, show up to every political meeting or bounce around to all the social networking events that go on. That just means that there should be time set aside where you become informed, you get involved in something that, well, maybe it's nonprofit work, or philanthropic efforts and endeavors, or maybe it is civically minded organizations and associations that are pushing for an issue or a specific cause that is near and dear to your heart. Being informed and involved is our duty as Americans, to pay attention. That doesn't mean we have to get all wrapped up in the rhetoric and, the wedge that, again, our elites want to drive between us based on things that we may not see along the same pathway. In that the ignorance and the unwillingness to do some of these things, like get informed and involved, is how we got here in the first place. We look at public schools, for instance, and the effort to put less of an emphasis on the importance of family structure and instilling some of the values that you and I may have grown up with, even if you grew up in a broken family, that there are certain foundational tenets that should be instilled in our young people to help create a better route for them as they grow older. You can pay attention and stay informed and get involved, but you can also do so by putting it into perspective, having relevant conversations with family, friends, complete strangers, without getting at each other's throats. And you can do so in a way that is measured, that doesn't dominate everything and anything about your life, and you could still enjoy all of the fruits of your labor and all of the efforts that you make day to day to stay informed, get involved, while also contributing as a positive member to our society. So I love you, Coach, but I think a little off base there with that thought, and to just completely ignore everything that is going on, and that your life will be less stressful. It doesn't mean you shouldn't disconnect, or you shouldn't take a break and a breath every once in a while. But it definitely, serves no one any good if, in fact, you just turn it all off. Because ultimately, well, your rights, your ability to act freely in this society and to be less stressful will turn into something completely different if you continue to give give to those with the decision rights, particularly as it relates to public policy in our country and the government. All right, tomorrow, State Treasurer Dale Falwell going to join us just after 8 o'clock, as he always does. Mike Kucharski, owner and CEO of the second largest refrigerated trucking company in the country, will also be with us as well. Busy night tonight with the new Hanover County Board of Education meeting. We'll get you details on that tomorrow morning, and plenty of other of news and notes that we missed today that we'll follow up with on Wednesday as part of our midweek broadcast here on the Big Talker FM. Stay safe, everyone. Looks like maybe some storms are brewing once again. And we'll talk to you tomorrow right here on the Big Talker FM.
Keeping Holden Beach informed. The Big Talker 106.7 FM.